Story 1. My wife divorced me after she found out I cheated. Now she has a new boyfriend, and I'm heartbroken but healing. I am 3 months after D-Day with my wife, 34F of 10 years. We have 4 kids. I was caught in a one-time physical affair with a random girl at work who showed me some attention. The thrill of being desired by someone led me to stray. My wife and I both have terrible communication issues and also previous traumas from childhood and past relationships. I am someone who needs to feel wanted and desired, and love to be loved. Unfortunately, my wife has severe intimacy issues and struggles to show any form of affection or desire for me. No excuses. I did a terrible thing and regret it immensely. In the immediate aftermath, she was calm and visibly emotionless, simply telling me it was over and that I needed to move out of the marital home while I was looking for somewhere else to live. We spoke for hours, more openly and honestly than either of us ever have. At that time, she told me she had never felt closer to me and we had mind-blowing sex multiple times a day, which has never ever been the case during the marriage. We talked about reconciling, how it might look, what I needed to do, and in the beginning things looked pretty good. Once I found an apartment and moved out, things rapidly changed. She became very cold to me and pushed me away. It was difficult to process because things were looking good initially. We had a family holiday booked prior to D-Day, which we went on to keep a good routine for the kids during the holiday. I was virtually ignored. I've never felt lonelier when surrounded by my family than this. Upon our return, we had a big bust-up about it and went semi-no contact, although we had to communicate with regards to me seeing the kids and finances, etc. During one of my days with the kids, I looked after them in the marital home while she works. I discovered through my eldest daughter that she had been seeing a man, and he had been coming to the house. I confronted her about it, and she texted me that she had sought him out prior to the holiday and had begun an emotional and physical relationship with him, despite telling me that she had no interest in this at the moment and wanted to work on herself at this time. My world has come crumbling down, as now he has met all my kids, slept with her in my bed, and moved a bunch of his things in a little over a fortnight. I was making great progress with my healing program, seeing a therapist multiple times a week, joining a male support group, seeking help for my various trauma issues, etc. And now feel like everything is back at square one. I still hold out hope for a future with my wife, but it seems more distant than ever. She tells me she loves me and that she always will because I am the kid's dad, but that she feels she can never trust me again. That at the moment she cannot see us being back together again. I am using guidance from my group therapist in this group to work on my issues and become the best dad I can be while growing and healing. I have made it very clear to my wife that I will always be open to reconciliation if and when she ever wants to, but this new relationship has really damaged me. She says it wasn't to hurt me but to try and become the person she is and not the person she was during our marriage. I guess I'd like to ask other wayward spouses how they dealt with a similar situation and betrayed partners who have experienced similar, what your thought processes were. Thank you. Update 1. Wanted to post a small update after this post. Firstly, I questioned her over a few things about her new relationship. She answered them honestly but felt I was interrogating her, which, with hindsight, I probably was. She said they genuinely didn't know each other until after I moved out, and I believe that he is at the house every day, sleeping in our bed, beers in our fridge, playing with our kids. It hurts like nothing I ever imagined, and yet I feel guilty for feeling this way because she didn't cheat on me. I cheated on her. I can't allow myself to believe my marriage is over. I have to cling on to hope somehow, which I know goes against the process of healing, but she says she loves me still and I love her. I only wonder if the love she feels will soon fade and move to the new man. This group of peers and observers has helped me so much in my growing and learning. I have certainly felt things I've never felt before. I guess that's the clarity and adversity feeling, and I'm slowly learning to feel them and process them rather than acting on them immediately, but it's proving challenging. Today is my day with the kids. She is meant to go to work. She decided she didn't want to go and stayed here with me and the kids. I've cooked with her, discussed making plans for a family day out, which she was receptive to, and talked about everything and anything. Sadly, she's been texting him throughout, but I understand it. She's sleeping now, and I can't focus on anything but looking at her. She said she didn't know if she wanted to get divorced, if she doesn't plan to remarry. I said, "What about renew vows?" semi-jokingly. She said no, she would want to marry again. I allowed myself to dream that it might be with me someday. Every day is 1% better than the last. I am not a bad person, I just did some bad things. Literally immediately after posting this, I noticed a message pop up on her phone. I can't see the full text contents. To be honest, I don't want to, but his name had heart emojis on it. I was always just in her phone as my name, surname initial, and he referred to her as babe. I know I should just be able to accept this and get over it, but every little thing like this just reignites the pain. Update 2. I am the wayward scum that ruined everything. Since the breakup, I have tried to do everything I could to understand the problems I have with myself, show true remorse, understand and empathize with the pain and hurt I have caused my wife and children, and taken the necessary steps to begin my journey to recovery. I'm in therapy, group counseling. I've also been referred to the GP for potential BPD diagnosis. After reading numerous books recommended here, podcasts, blogs, and videos, I realized that I had been doing everything wrong. I love-bombed. I talked about my feelings too much. I pleaded and bargained. Last night, after a particularly difficult phone call with my kids where they wanted to play with the new man rather than me, I broke down. I begged her to reconsider. She very calmly told me to respect her decision and that she just wanted to be listened to. This was the wake-up call I needed to realize that my efforts have been the wrong ones. I honestly believe she has jumped into a new relationship too quickly, especially as she identifies herself that she has numerous emotional and mental health issues that she needs to address. But she seems happy, and I have to learn to accept that and foremost listen to her. She said that for even a remote chance of reconciliation, I am relying on her new relationship failing, and that in itself isn't healthy, and she won't sabotage it just because she's having her needs met by someone else now because I destroyed her feeling of safety, trust, and loyalty. She said she loves me still, but also that she feels herself falling in love with a new man. We have a need for daily contact because of the kids, which prevents no contact, and every time I see her, I just want to express my remorse, tell her about the progress I'm making, and show her that I can be fully committed to our affair. But because of the new man fulfilling her needs, she doesn't want to hear it. I already know what replies I'm going to get and am deserving and prepared for them. I just want someone to tell me that I can get better and that maybe someday there can still be hope for reconciliation because the alternative is just too much to think about. Thank you, and I'm sorry. Edit. She told me she had joined an online dating site during the time we were considering reconciliation and spoke to a dozen or so men before finally meeting this one. He is also a betrayed spouse, and they have bonded over it, seemingly. I have no reason to believe otherwise. I am coming to the realization that she has chosen her path to feel whole, real, and happy, and that I must live with the consequences of my actions and make sure I can be a better man and father than I was. I'll always cling to some hope. Otherwise, I fear I may lose myself to the guilt, shame, and sadness forever. It's taken a little while, a lot of pain, self-doubt, shame, guilt, anger, and a whole range of other emotions, none of which compare to those that I have caused my wife to finally come to terms with the fact that she has moved on and is happy. My goal is to continue to learn, grow, and heal and rid myself of the sickness that has plagued my life for too long. I've been in darkness for 3 months, and it has had a massive negative effect on my health, physically and mentally, and I know this has had a knock-on effect on my kids. I am a very goal-driven and motivated person, and I will do this. I will always cling on to some hope for reconciliation with my wife, and if I am ever offered the gift, I want to be in the best place to accept it. I tried, I really did. We filed the divorce papers today. It's over. She dangled the carrot of saying the only way she'd remarry is if it was to me again. But she also said she isn't looking for anyone else, and that changed in 2 weeks. I really hope she finds happiness and love in her new relationship, and that my kids will always keep me in their hearts. I suspect this will be my last post here. Thank you to all betrayed spouses and wayward spouses for their inspiration, support, and kindness. I'm sorry. Update 3. So today marks 3 months since D-Day 2. It feels like a lifetime has passed. So much has happened in such a short space of time. My wife finally told me that she is in love with a new man and is choosing him over us. Maybe it was selfish of me, but I needed to hear that closure, if you will. We have begun the financial separation, And surprisingly to me, this was the moment when her anger finally came out. She has been remarkably emotionless on the outside, although I'm sure she has been battling her feelings internally. I believe the realization that she is going to struggle without my financial support has brought the anger out of her, and things have turned spiteful, with threats of violence from family members and verbal abuse. Of course, I will always financially support my children anyway. I want to take this chance to self-reflect on the past 3 months and offer up some things I've learned, things I've done wrong, and things I've done right, to maybe offer some insight to other wayward spouses who are not being offered the gift of reconciliation. Surround yourself with people who love you and bring you joy. I'm not talking about men who tell you your ex is to blame and you are perfect, but people who understand you, support you, and bring your focus back. I made the mistake of shunning everyone and retreating into my hole, which led to loneliness and depression. Your true friends will make themselves known. Do not go through this alone. Occupy your mind with things you enjoy, things you never even knew you enjoyed, and things that bring joy to others. Like many, my self-esteem and self-respect nosedived after the breakup. Take time to remind yourself of your positive traits. I am a good father, a hard worker, motivated, and bring joy to others. Make a list, put it on your bathroom mirror, and in big letters at the bottom, put, "It's okay not to be okay now, but know one day you will be better." You will not believe it at first, but every single day will be better than the last. You are good enough. Reach out for help. In addition to your friends and family, you must be proactive in your recovery. I have always been against medication for mental health. There is a stigma attached to it, especially in men, but I realized that lack of sleep, rapid weight loss, and horrifying mood swings were not in my control and saw my GP for help. Antidepressants have got my sleep back in routine, a slightly better appetite, and the wide gap between the ups and downs has narrowed. Get therapy. Yesterday, I honestly cannot underestimate how important this is. Get one that has experience with infidelity, trauma, and relationships. I have learned so much about myself, my codependent nature, my attachment style, my love language, and my perception of myself and others. And without first understanding something, how can you ever learn to overcome it? Do it now. Understand, learn, challenge, and resist. Some people say they don't know why they cheated, and initially that may be true, so make it your mission to find out why and then be proactive in finding out what you can do to prevent it again. It might be addiction. It might be for validation. It could be many things, but without understanding and learning about it, you could be doomed to repeat. I did with both of my marriages, and at 40 years old, I'm not going to do it again. Challenge your belief system. I've cultured a belief system from my childhood that being happy is reliant upon the happiness of others. The thought of being happy by myself was foreign to me. Similarly, the notion that being content and stagnant is a negative. It's not. You must challenge these beliefs, and it starts with your actions. Do things differently, which in turn will change your feelings and emotions, and eventually your beliefs. Resist. We're all here because we broke boundaries, but do you even have your own? I didn't. I did whatever people asked of me because I'm a people pleaser. I feared rejection and judgment from others, so I would put myself in a position I didn't want to be just to avoid feeling that way. Remember, no is a complete sentence. One day you will need to forgive yourself. You did a bad thing, but you are not a bad person. Sorry for rambling. I know I said I wouldn't post here again, but this community has been so important to me these short months, and it would be remiss of me not to share my journey with others. Edit. I totally get why she is doing what she is doing. She has always bounced from relationship to relationship as a coping mechanism, a way to avoid dealing with breakup trauma and the issues she continues to have. A new relationship is exciting, full of passion and romance and desire. That's why what happened with me happened. So I totally get it and understand it. On the outside, our relationship was good. I did truly love and desire my wife all the time, but I felt it wasn't reciprocated. I should have been strong enough to effectively communicate my need for affection and desire, but I didn't, leaving myself feeling unwanted and unloved. I was once told that she didn't want to make love with me and only did because she felt she had to as my wife and would just lay there and wait for me to finish. This made me feel like I was a sexual offender, and I retreated even further for fear of rejection. All things we should have been strong enough to overcome, but we didn't, and here we are now. I'll always hold out hope that one day my wife will come back to me. But I also realize that it is unlikely and that I mustn't allow that to be the driving force in my recovery and healing. I have a plan and a goal for my immediate future, and as a very motivated, goal-driven individual, I intend to exceed them. I will make sure that if an opportunity to further my own journey presents itself, I will be in the best mental state to fully appreciate it, cherish and nurture it, and grow together. Thank you again, faceless, nameless stranger. You may never know the weight your words carry. Update 4. Just over 3 months post D-Day, wayward spouse here, separated from wife, now deeply in love with her new partner, no reconciliation. You deserve to be miserable. I can't seem to shift the feeling of never being happy again. No matter what I do, whatever things I try to bring me joy, I simply cannot allow myself to feel any kind of happiness. When something happens that should make me feel good, all I feel is guilt for allowing myself a moment to feel good. How dare I feel this after what I've done? Right, it's not about you, selfish. Then I feel selfish about caring about my feelings when all I should be focusing on is my spouse's feelings and recovery, showing humility, remorse, and compassion, even though we're not in reconciliation. Stop making yourself a victim. It's having a real effect on my day-to-day life. Even spending time with my kids, which should be the ultimate joy, is really hard because of the all-consuming guilt and self-hatred for what I've done. Get over it, we're finished. I guess I'm asking if this is normal and if it ever changes. So how? Are we wayward spouses deserving of happiness? Or are we consigned to a life of shame, guilt, and sadness? Betrayed spouses, do you want to see your wayward spouses happy, regardless of reconciliation? I just want to feel okay someday. I expect that if you're reading this, it's probably already too late. But on the off chance you are here and you haven't yet become a wayward, please, I implore you, don't do it and read on. Just stop and think for a second. Think of all the irreversible damage you are going to cause, not just to yourself or your partner, but your children, your affair partner's partner and children, your close family and friends. Everyone you know is going to be damaged, and for what? A quickie with an office colleague? A grope in a motel? A text conversation with an ex? Is it worth causing so much devastation for? I am a wayward. I cheated on my wife on 2 separate occasions. One emotional affair 3 years ago, one in May. She left me after the second one, and rightly so. Let me tell you what this cost. My wife, my marriage are gone forever. I've lost my home. I live in a crummy bedroom in a shared house in a nasty part of town. My financial security. I pay significant child maintenance and have to work 80+ hours a week just to make ends meet. Full and uncontrolled access to my 4 beautiful, innocent children. I get to see them 4 hours a day for 3 days a week. I can't kiss them goodnight or watch them sleeping or see their faces in the morning before they leave for school. All our shared friends, my family-in-law. I'm just that cheating idiot now. My mental health, my physical well-being, and my own self-respect. Yet I deserve all of it. But the biggest loss wasn't mine. It was hers. She lost so much more. Ask any betrayed partner what an affair cost them. It'll make my list seem paltry in comparison. The anxiety, the sleepless nights, the daily triggers, the complete rewiring of their neuropathies, their safety, trust in others, heightened insecurities, self-esteem, self-worth, and that barely scratches the surface. So please, whatever problems you're having with your relationship, with yourself, with your job, or whatever is going on inside your head that makes you think stepping outside the relationship/marriage is the answer, and okay, stop, please. I'm pleading with you. Just don't do it. Communicate with your partner, get therapy, check the infidelity subreddits, and read some of the posts from betrayed partners and see what it has done to them. Do whatever you need to do to not do it. Don't be me, because I don't want to be me anymore either. Update 5. I haven't participated in this sub for a while, and even left the after infidelity sub as I felt it no longer held any relevancy to my situation, but wanted to post a little update for other waywards who find themselves in the position of life without her. Today marks 6 months since D-Day and incidentally my 40th birthday. A great deal has happened in the month since my last post. The relationship between me and my betrayed spouse has been one giant roller coaster. At times it was as vicious, hurtful, and spiteful as you could imagine. And at others there was genuine care, remorse, regret, sadness, and joy felt and shown by both parties. We both said and did things we regret, out of character, from a place of anger, frustration, and fear. We also reminisced on the good times and expressed the love we had for each other that you'd expect after 10 years and 4 kids. I'm happy to report that we are both now in much better places. Apart but better. We have both reflected on our marriage and realized how toxic and abusive it was at times on both sides, and even without infidelity, it was unlikely to last much longer, and if it did, it would have been an unhappy and unfulfilling one. Our communication now is friendly. We talk almost daily about anything and everything, and even if it's still tinged with some sadness, it brings me great peace to know they are thriving. My betrayed spouse is still with their new partner, and they are very much in love. The partner is a good man, takes good care of my betrayed spouse, and is a good role model for our children. I recently met a new woman who has shown me a completely different kind of love, something completely foreign and bizarre to me. My children think she is wonderful, and this brings me great joy. I am very much a happy man. I have learned so much through self-reflection, therapy, these subreddits, YouTube, etc., that I have been able to put into practice in my new relationship. Being open and honest with my feelings, setting boundaries, being transparent and accountable, and living without fear of abandonment or the need for validation and other codependent traits. It's been liberating for both me and my betrayed spouse. This new happiness has made us much better parents. Taking the anger and frustration we had for each other away and replacing it with joy and peace has been reflected in our joint love for the kids. They see their parents happy and thriving, and this brings them joy and happiness too. I guess ultimately what I'm trying to tell other waywards in a similar position is just because you haven't been given the gift of reconciliation doesn't mean you shouldn't do the work, because that work will prepare you for what comes next, and next could be exactly what you've always wanted. It is often said that waywards live in darkness, and this is true, but it's always darkest right before dawn. Do the work. Your dawn is coming. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. I took out massive loans for college, while my parents paid for my sister's tuition. Now they want $50,000 from me, and I refused. 18 months later, my pregnancy revealed a shocking truth about my family. I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my parents, especially my mom, 58F. Growing up in a small Midwestern town, our family seemed picture-perfect from the outside. Hardworking dad, devoted homemaker mom, and 2 daughters. But behind closed doors, it was a different story. From as early as I can remember, it was clear that my younger sister, Betty, 29F, was the golden child. She was born when I was 3, and I still have vivid memories of being shuffled off to my grandparents' house for weeks, while my mom focused all her attention on the new baby. At first, I thought it was just because Betty was little and needed more care, but as the years went by, the pattern continued. Betty excelled in academics and sports from an early age. She was reading chapter books by kindergarten, winning spelling bees in elementary school, and dominating on the soccer field by middle school. I, on the other hand, struggled with dyslexia that went undiagnosed until I was 12. My parents, particularly my mom, saw my difficulties as laziness rather than a learning disability. I vividly remember sitting at the kitchen table in tears, trying to read aloud from my 4th grade history textbook while my mom grew increasingly frustrated. "Why can't you just focus?" she'd snap. Betty never has trouble with her reading. It was a refrain I'd hear countless times over the years. While Betty brought home straight A's and sports trophies, I found my passion in art and music. I spent hours sketching in my room or playing my secondhand guitar, but these pursuits were seen as frivolous by my parents. When I proudly showed my mom a portrait I'd drawn of our family dog, she barely glanced at it before asking if I'd finished my math homework. The favoritism extended far beyond academics. Every year, Betty got new clothes for school shopping, while I got hand-me-downs or thrift store finds. She had the latest gaming consoles and phones, while I made do with outdated technology. For her 16th birthday, my parents surprised Betty with a brand new car, a shiny red Volkswagen Beetle. When my 16th birthday rolled around a few years earlier, I had received a used bike from the neighbor's garage sale. I remember confronting my mom about the unfairness. When I was 17, we were in the kitchen, and I had just been told I couldn't go on the school trip to France because it was too expensive, even though Betty had gone on a similar trip the year before. When I pointed out the double standard, my mom's face hardened. Well, she said coldly, when you start bringing home grades like Betty's, maybe you'll deserve nice things too. My dad, 60M, wasn't as openly critical as my mom, but his silence was almost worse. He was always buried in his work as an accountant, leaving the child rearing primarily to my mom. When I tried to talk to him about the unfair treatment, he'd just shrug and say, "Your mother knows best." His passive enabling was, in many ways, as hurtful as my mom's active favoritism. The real kicker came when it was time for college. My parents paid Betty's full tuition to an expensive private university in California. She got a tearful send-off, complete with a new laptop and dorm accessories. When it was my turn to apply to schools, I was told matter-of-factly that they'd already spent too much on Betty's education and I'd have to figure it out myself. I ended up taking out massive loans to attend the state university an hour from our hometown. Those college years were tough. While Betty posted photos of beach parties and spring break trips, I worked 2 part-time jobs just to afford textbooks and ramen noodles. But it was also during this time that I really came into my own, away from my parents' constant comparisons. I thrived in my art classes and even had a few pieces displayed in student showcases. After graduation, I made the difficult decision to move across the country to New York to pursue my art career. It was scary leaving everything I knew behind, but I felt suffocated in my hometown, always living in Betty's shadow. I limited contact with my family to occasional phone calls and obligatory holiday visits. Meanwhile, Betty followed the path my parents had always envisioned. She stayed close to home, got a job at a prestigious law firm, married her college sweetheart at 24, and had her first child by 26. My parents doted on their grandchildren and constantly pestered me about when I was going to settle down and start a real family. They seemed oblivious to the fact that I was building a life I loved, even if it didn't fit their narrow definition of success. 5 years ago, I met my now husband, Matthew, 34M, at an art gallery opening. He's been incredibly supportive of my career and encouraged me to set better boundaries with my family. When we got married last year, we opted for a small, artistic ceremony in a sculpture garden. My parents and Betty attended, but they spent most of the time criticizing our unconventional choices, like my colorful dress and our food truck catering, rather than celebrating with us. Now, here's where the current situation comes in. Last month, my dad called out of the blue. At first, I thought maybe someone was sick or there was some kind of emergency. But no. Apparently, their retirement savings took a big hit in the stock market crash, and they're struggling financially. Betty and her husband are having money troubles of their own due to some failed investments, so they can't help much. My dad asked if Matthew and I could lend them $50,000 to help them get back on their feet. I was absolutely stunned. After years of favoritism and financial support for Betty, they have the audacity to ask me for money. I told my dad I'd think about it and talk to Matthew, but internally I was seething. When I explained the situation to Matthew later that night, he was furious on my behalf. He pointed out that we worked hard for our savings, and a lot of it is earmarked for fertility treatments we're planning to start soon. We've been trying to conceive for over a year with no luck, and the emotional and financial stress of that journey has been significant. Matthew said it's not our responsibility to bail my parents out, especially given our history. I agree with Matthew, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't conflicted. Despite everything, there's still a part of me that craves my parents' approval and love. A tiny voice in my head whispers that maybe if I help them now, they'll finally see my worth, but a louder, more rational part knows that's unlikely to happen. After a few days of mulling it over, I called my dad back and told him we couldn't afford to help them right now. I tried to be gentle but firm, explaining that our own financial situation was tight due to the fertility treatments. My mom got on the phone and started guilt-tripping me immediately. She said I was being selfish and ungrateful and that family should always come first. She brought up how they supported me through college, by which she meant co-signing my loans, which I'm still paying off, and said I owed them. When she started in on how Betty would help if she could, I lost my cool. I told her that maybe if they treated me fairly growing up, I'd be more inclined to help now. Betty called me later that day, absolutely furious. She said I was being petty and holding on to childhood grudges. She accused me of abandoning our parents in their time of need and said I should be ashamed of myself. When I tried to remind her of all the advantages she'd been given over the years, she dismissed it as ancient history and said I needed to grow up. I ended up hanging up on her. Now my whole family is mad at me. My parents are sending guilt-tripping texts daily, ranging from passive-aggressive, I guess we know who we can really count on, to outright manipulative. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof because of the stress. I hope you're happy. Betty and her husband are bad-mouthing me to our extended family, painting me as a selfish, ungrateful daughter who's abandoning her parents in their time of need. Even some aunts and uncles have reached out to express their disappointment in me. They don't know the full history, of course. My parents have always been good at maintaining their perfect family image to the outside world. Matthew says I did the right thing and that I don't owe them anything. He's been amazingly supportive, even offering to field calls from my family to give me a break from the stress. But I can't help feeling conflicted. Am I being petty? Should I just give them the money to keep the peace? Or am I right to stand my ground after years of unfair treatment? I feel like I'm going crazy with all the guilt and second-guessing. So Reddit, I need some outside perspective. AITA for refusing to help my parents financially after years of favoritism towards my sister? Date 1. It's been about a month since my last post, and to say a lot has happened would be an understatement. First, I want to thank everyone for their supportive comments and advice. It really helped me gain perspective on the situation and gave me the strength to stand my ground. After my initial refusal to help, my parents doubled down on their guilt-tripping tactics. They started calling multiple times a day, leaving long voicemails about how I was breaking their hearts and tearing the family apart. My mom even went so far as to say that my refusal to help was causing my dad's health to deteriorate. It was emotionally exhausting. Things escalated when my mom showed up at my workplace unannounced one day. I work at a small art gallery in Brooklyn, and I was in the middle of giving a tour to some potential buyers when I saw her walk in. My heart dropped to my stomach. She made a beeline for me, ignoring my polite requests to wait until I was finished. In front of my colleagues and clients, she started ranting about what an ungrateful daughter I was and how I was abandoning them in their time of need. It was humiliating and infuriating. My boss had to ask her to leave, and I spent the rest of the day hiding in the back room, mortified. That night, Matthew suggested we take a step back and go no contact for a while to clear our heads. We blocked their numbers and social media accounts, which gave us some much-needed peace. However, they then started reaching out to our friends and my in-laws trying to get messages to us. Felt like we were being stalked. The situation came to a head 2 weeks ago. We were at a local art fair where I was exhibiting some of my work. It was a beautiful Saturday afternoon, and I was feeling optimistic. I'd already sold a few pieces and was chatting with a potential buyer when I spotted my parents and Betty approaching my booth. I immediately tensed up, but Matthew, who was helping me that day, squeezed my hand reassuringly. My mom started off with fake pleasantries, complimenting my art in a way that felt backhanded. "Oh, how interesting," she said, eyeing an abstract piece. "I suppose there's a market for everything these days." Then she launched into her usual spiel about family obligation and how desperate their situation was. Betty chimed in, saying I was being cruel and heartless. That's when Matthew stepped in. In all the years I've known him, I've never seen him so angry. He calmly but firmly told them that their behavior was unacceptable, and that if they couldn't respect our boundaries, we'd have no choice but to get a restraining order. My dad looked shocked, while my mom and Betty sputtered indignantly. Seeing Matthew stand up for me gave me courage. I found my voice and told them that years of favoritism and emotional abuse had consequences. I said I was done being manipulated and that if they ever wanted a relationship with me in the future, they needed to take a long, hard look at their behavior and get professional help. They left in a huff, but not before my mom hissed that I'd regret this when they were old and dying. It was painful, but I also felt a weird sense of relief at finally standing up for myself. The aftermath has been mixed. Some extended family members who initially sided with my parents have reached out to apologize after hearing my side of the story. My Aunt Sarah, My mom's sister called me in tears. She said she had no idea things were so bad and apologized for not seeing it sooner. That conversation was healing in a way I didn't expect. Others are still giving me the cold shoulder. My cousin Mark, who's always been close to Betty, sent me a scathing email about loyalty and family obligation. I chose not to respond. Betty sent a long, rambling email a week after the art fair incident. She accused me of exaggerating our childhood and claimed she had it hard too because of the pressure to be perfect. She said I was selfish for not helping our parents and that I was jeopardizing her children's future by not ensuring our parents had a stable retirement. It was clear she still didn't get it. On a personal note, Matthew and I have decided to move forward with our fertility treatments. We're excited about potentially starting our own family, one built on love and equal treatment. The process is daunting, but it feels good to be taking positive steps towards our future. I've also started seeing a therapist to work through some of my lingering issues from childhood. It's been challenging to unpack years of emotional baggage, but I already feel like I'm making progress. My therapist has been helping me recognize patterns of manipulation and giving me tools to set healthy boundaries. Work has been a mixed bag. The scene my family caused at the art fair actually led to increased interest in my work, apparently drama sells. I've sold several major pieces in the last few weeks, but I'm also dealing with lingering embarrassment from the incident at the gallery. My boss has been understanding, but I can't help feeling like my professional reputation has been tarred. I still have moments of doubt and guilt, especially late at night when the house is quiet and my mind starts to wander. Did I do the right thing? Am I being too harsh? But overall, I feel like I'm on the right path. Setting firm boundaries with my family of origin has been difficult but necessary. For now, I'm focusing on building a life and support system with people who truly care about me, not what I can do for them. It's a work in progress, but for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about the future. Update 2. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and things have settled into a new normal. We've maintained our no-contact stance with my parents and Betty, which has been both liberating and challenging. There are days when I feel light and free, and others when the weight of family estrangement hits hard. The fertility treatments we started have been emotionally and physically taxing. The hormone injections make me feel like a pincushion, and the mood swings are intense. There have been moments of hope followed by crushing disappointment, but through it all, Matthew has been my rock. He's there with ice packs after injections, he holds me when the pregnancy tests come back negative, and he reminds me to stay hopeful. We're cautiously optimistic about our chances of conceiving, but we're also exploring adoption as an option. Last month, we received a certified letter from my parents. I was hesitant to open it, fearing more guilt-tripping or threats. My hands shook as I tore open the envelope. To my surprise, it contained a formal apology. They acknowledged their favoritism and the hurt it caused me. They said they've started seeing a family therapist to work on their issues and hoped that someday we could rebuild our relationship. The letter felt surreal. Part of me wanted to believe it was genuine, while another part was deeply skeptical. I've been down this road before. My mom would occasionally apologize after a big fight, only to revert to her old behavior within days. I showed the letter to my own therapist, who advised caution and reminded me that true change takes time and consistent effort. After much deliberation, I decided to respond with a brief email. I thanked them for the apology and told them I was glad they were getting help. However, I made it clear that I wasn't ready to resume contact and that any future relationship would depend on their continued efforts to change and respect my boundaries. Betty hasn't reached out directly, but I heard through a cousin that she and her husband are also in counseling. Apparently, our confrontation at the art fair made her realize some hard truths about our family dynamics. I'm not sure how to feel about this information. Part of me hopes she's genuinely working on herself, but I'm wary of getting my hopes up. On a brighter note, my art career has been taking off. The publicity from the scene my family caused at the fair actually led to increased interest in my work. I've sold several major pieces and have been commissioned for a public mural in our city. It's a dream come true, but it also comes with its own set of pressures. I find myself working long hours, trying to capitalize on this momentum while it lasts. Matthew and I have been using this time to focus on strengthening our own little family unit. We've been having deep conversations about our values and how we want to raise our future children. We're both committed to creating a home environment that's the opposite of what I experienced growing up, one filled with unconditional love, support, and open communication. We've also been working on building a stronger support network. We've been spending more time with friends who feel like family, and I've reconnected with a few cousins who reached out after hearing about the situation with my parents. It feels good to be surrounded by people who accept and value me for who I am. There have been challenging moments too. The holidays were particularly tough. It was the first Thanksgiving and Christmas we didn't spend with my family, and the absence was palpable. We ended up hosting a Friendsgiving with other people who couldn't be with their families, which helped ease the loneliness. While the situation with my family is still unresolved, I feel more at peace than I have in years. I'm learning that it's okay to prioritize my own well-being and that setting boundaries doesn't make me a bad person. The future feels uncertain but full of possibilities. I still have days where I question my decisions, where I miss the idea of a close-knit family, but then I remind myself of how far I've come and the healthier relationships I'm building. It's a process and I'm taking it one day at a time. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and life has taken some unexpected turns. The biggest news is that our fertility treatments were successful. I'm pregnant with twins. Matthew and I are over the moon but also a bit terrified at the prospect of 2 babies at once. The first trimester was rough with morning sickness and fatigue, but now in my second trimester, I'm feeling much better. The pregnancy news brought up a lot of complicated feelings about family. As we started preparing for the babies, I found myself wishing I could share the joy with my parents and Betty, despite our issues. After much discussion with Matthew and my therapist, I decided to send them a brief email announcing the pregnancy. I made it clear that this wasn't an invitation to resume full contact but rather a gesture of cautious optimism. Their responses were surprisingly mature. My parents sent a heartfelt congratulations and reiterated their commitment to changing their behavior. They asked if I would accept a gift for the babies, which I agreed to after some hesitation. Betty's reply was shorter but sincere, expressing happiness for us and hope for reconciliation in the future. We're taking things very slowly. I've had a few short phone calls with my parents, always with clear boundaries set beforehand. They seem to be genuinely trying to respect my limits, which is encouraging. They haven't pushed for visits or tried to overstep, which is a big change from their past behavior. Betty and I have exchanged a few texts, mostly about the pregnancy and her kids. It's stilted and a bit awkward, but it's a start. The pregnancy has also brought up some fears for me. I'm terrified of repeating my parents' mistakes or showing favoritism to one twin over the other. Matthew and I have been reading parenting books and attending classes, determined to break the cycle of dysfunction. We've had long talks about our parenting philosophies and how to create a loving, equitable environment for both babies. As for our financial situation, the success of my art career has been a blessing. The mural commission led to more high-profile projects, and I've even had a small showing at a respected gallery in Manhattan. We've been able to save for the babies and even set aside a small emergency fund for my parents should they truly need it in the future. It feels good to be in a position of strength rather than obligation. The pregnancy has forced me to slow down and take better care of myself, which has been a valuable lesson in self-care. I'm learning to say no to projects that don't align with my values or energy levels and to prioritize my health and well-being. Looking ahead, I'm cautiously optimistic about the future of our family relationships. There's still a lot of work to be done, and I'm under no illusions that everything will magically be perfect, but I feel like we're on a path towards healing, even if it's a long and winding one. For now, Matthew and I are focused on preparing for the arrival of our little ones and building the kind of loving, supportive family we both always wanted. We've been setting up the nursery, choosing names, and imagining what life will be like with 2 newborns. It's exciting and terrifying, but I'm grateful for this new chapter. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Started praying for my workaholic husband's libido to return so we could finally start the family he keeps mentioning. I, 37F, love my husband, 41M, more than anything. However, He's had such a low libido over the last 3 years that I'm really starting to wonder if I can do this much longer. Is divorce really the only option when everything else is so right? He is not cheating. His testosterone levels have been tested and are normal. He is not overweight. He had a strong drive early in the relationship. He has Viagra, but it doesn't really do much. Yeah, it helps hold an erection, but it doesn't generate any desire, and it gives him migraines. My husband is incredible. He works probably 60 to 80 hours a week to provide above and beyond what we need. Our house is gorgeous. My car and overall safety are his priority. He shows love through acts of service and gift-giving. It's constant. I have to watch what I say around him, or he'll find whatever and get at it for me. He's patient, reliable, generous, kind, hardworking, faithful, and he's sexy. But even after maybe 4 to 6 hard discussions about sex over the past 3 years, some discussions that cause me to cry, he doesn't get it. I've told him to write it on a calendar. It doesn't even need to be penetration. I've kept up my end by giving oral whenever the mood strikes. I don't always want to, but he deserves it, and it's what I'd want too. And that's just it. Even after saying I'm human, I didn't sign up for forced celibacy. Just give me a little something here and there. It's not I'm starting to really think we're never going to have a family, even though he always talks about growing our family and having a child one day. But forget a baby. I can't even get him to do me nothing, not even try. So I try to water our grass as much as I can, but I'm doing it 100% alone, and damn it, non-stop sex is a pro for marriage, and I'm young and hot and want it. What is the deal? So today we're having another discussion. I'm at a loss for words at this point. I'm not going to leave him. There's no ultimatum to give. I've cried. I've been mad. I've approached it with love. I've tried to model the sexual romance I'm seeking. I feel I've tried it all. I just want him to be happy, which I guess he is, like really happy and satisfied, which I know I can provide. I love sex. Hard, soft, spicy, vanilla, penetration, oral, porn. All of it. I never thought I'd be here. Please, after digesting all this context, if there's anything that you think would resonate when we talk tonight, other than begging, which I've done, share your insight. I know a lot of you will say to look inwards. I have and will continue to do so. Please trust me that I've been more than patient, understanding, and helpful. Also, I wouldn't accept weight or appearance as an excuse to ignore your partner for 3 years. But I'm 5 feet 5 inches and 120 pounds and have maintained this weight my entire adult life. He is not gay. Lastly, when I point blank ask him what the deal is, he never gives me a real answer, and I know he's sick of this too, which is why I can't understand why he wouldn't just throw me a bone once in a while to shut me up. This is the only issue we have, but boy, is it a big one. He works probably 60 to 80 hours a week. Oops, these are new hours. It hasn't been like this for 3 years. But if this is the issue, how do I ease the stress so we can have sex? Oops, we pet, kiss, and sometimes cuddle into each other at night. I'm fine with that. I don't need much more physical touch regularly, but I do need sex as an outlet and to connect with my husband. Update 1. The gist of the original post is that for 3 years, my husband and I have had sex like 10 times, except on our wedding weekend/honeymoon. I went on and on about all the talks we've had, how patient and helpful I've tried to be, how I still give him oral from time to time because I can't just do nothing. I love all the sex and I need it in my life however I can get it, but he refuses me often, and I feel that he fails to see me as human with sexual needs. No amount of words or tears has altered his behavior at all. So, of course, there's a deep sadness that stems from no desire or intimacy from the only person in the world that matters, and from the person who promised time and time again he'd pay more attention to my needs, and from the person who otherwise goes above and beyond every day for me. It's been so confusing and, at times, just downright cruel. He's never given me an answer or reason. He's never ever said anything other than he loves me and he'll try harder. Literally, y'all, I told him to put it on a calendar. I don't care, just do me, and he couldn't even do that. After posting asking for help because I was planning to have yet another talk with him, I got so much great but hard feedback. Why are you talking again? He's been very clear he doesn't want sex. It won't get better, so you have to decide for yourself to stay or go. He's lying to you, so true, so wise, but so painful. I got upset, deleted the thread, drove around for an hour in tears, mourning us and my whole vision of our future. A vision he said he wants. That vision includes trying to have one kid. I just want my little angel if it's meant to be, and of course I want a happy, healthy husband. It all felt like it came crashing down, and I couldn't handle being advised to leave him. I'm sorry to you guys for bailing when you were, in fact, taking the time to offer great advice, and I did follow your advice and said the convo. He knows what the problem is, and yes, to everyone's point, WTH was I going to say anyway? That night was calm, but I just got stoned when I got home and turned on Lord of the Rings. He stayed out of my way. I still didn't know what to say or how to say it and was still digesting your words. Next day, yesterday, woke up, first thought, I deserve a convo, and I'm going to tell this MF exactly what I feel, and that could include an ultimatum for divorce. So I told him that morning, including the divorce part. Well, I'm in our closet changing after work, and he comes in and closes the door. We have a big closet with a seating area where we chat sometimes, but never close the door. He says, look, and he pulls out his weenie, and it's covered with a rash that has one open wound. He said, this is awful for me to talk about. I have genital psoriasis. I got it from the stress of my brain injury. He was in the hospital for a month, couldn't hold a job, moved in by himself for a year before he felt he could function in society again. It's incurable, very painful, and flares up with stress. I looked at his dick and then looked him straight in the eye and said, you've put me through hell for 3 years because of this. You almost made me call off our wedding because of this. You brought me to tears and made me question my own womanhood because of this. The conversation continued. I know. I don't know what to say. I was scared to death. It's not contagious. Me? I know it's not. I wouldn't care if it was. I don't think you're cheating, but you've lied to me this entire time. You broke my heart over and over all because of your pride and embarrassment over something totally fine and normal. I know this is really hard for me, and I'm trying to be vulnerable. I can tell he's physically uncomfortable at this point. No, it does not. I get what you're saying at this point. He brought up me sharing my ovulation schedule with him. He said he keeps it and tracks it, and unfortunately, while he knows I peak Saturday, he has an outbreak right now, as he showed me. That's no problem at all, but you have to tell me. As far as I knew, you were just ignoring the whole thing, and that was awful. I'm thinking I'm on this boat with you, and we're a team, and next thing I know, I'm on an island by myself. We left it with an agreement that he'll let me know when he feels good, and then I'll initiate when I'm in the mood. I've done a ton of research on this because, as you all know, I love this man and want to fix this, so I've learned about responsive advances and I think this may work better for him. Is this exactly what I wanted? Yes and no. Yes, because I have cold, hard facts that directly contribute to this issue. I already feel sexier and more in control. No, because we're still going to have to wait to see if he takes initiative when he doesn't have an outbreak, which will be hard right now because of the heat and his work hours. And yes, I did say that we could always downsize, and that we can rethink having a child if money was the root of his stress. That all this gesturing broadly isn't worth losing this gesturing between him and I. He swore it isn't and that he's in a great but stressful position right now. And of course, the 110-degree heat isn't helping. Overall, I'm satisfied. I feel lighter, reinvigorated to meet him where he is, and more confident as a woman for the first time in a long time. We had real intimacy. That moment in the closet was non-physical intimacy, which I so desperately crave, and I now have a much better understanding of his mindset so I can adjust my attempts to seduce him. Wild ride. Thanks for reading. Edit. Thank you all for sending me to the psoriasis sub. I've gotten hundreds of immensely helpful comments from those suffering and those whose partners are suffering. After learning more, I completely understand how insensitive suggesting oral sex was. That during an outbreak, so much as a little chubby, much less a full erection, can be god-awful. I understand so much better now and will not put this expectation on him. Oops, I 100% agree. I told myself this is one step in a long journey, but if I'm not going to leave, then I've got to be willing to go through this. I feel much better, but I know we have a ways to go. Oops, I'm still resentful of this too. I'm trying to be supportive while also being pissed. In no way do I think this is 100% resolved. Oh, OP, I really appreciate you taking the time to reply. This is exactly how I feel too. I understand what everyone is saying, But I know him, and he doesn't want to hurt or disappoint me ever, and he never has except for this. Update 2. Hasn't even been a week, and it's like I'm in a new marriage. We have our breakthrough, and then he had to travel for work, but it gave me a few days to 1. Digest everything, and 2. Get all the products you guys recommended. He came home to his side of the bed full of different soaps, lotions, and underwear. I never said a word. He poked around and pulled some stuff out and took it to the bathroom. He said he doesn't like the Bombas undies I got, but that he knows a brand he does like. They're just too expensive. This is a whole new layer to this. He literally said no to this expensive underwear because he'd rather spend that kind of money on me or something we both need. We've got to work on him knowing he is worth whatever the cost that's needed to bring him happiness. He's totally worth expensive undies, the derm visits, the shots and creams. If I have to pay every cent to get him there, that's fine. He takes complete care of me and would do the same. I also have Rex for docs, but that'll come later. I'm just so grateful he wasn't put off by me trying to help. He was open and curious, and we've even chatted a bit about the patterns he experiences when he has an outbreak. I felt so much more confident too. I was always awkward and uncomfortable, kind of not because of him necessarily, but it was the constant rejection that just made me so confused. Does he even want me to touch him? Does he even like me? But now I'm rolling all over him, and he's being so receptive, grabbing me and dragging me all over him too, calling me beautiful while looking in my eyes, kissing my face, my head, my mouth. When it's time to get up, I just simply say, I don't want to hurt you, and he picks me up and helps me off him. Easy peasy. Even this morning, I went to get up around 6, and he sleepily said, no, y'all, this man hasn't cared if I came or went for 3 years. Well, yes, he probably has, but never knew how to say it. See, he knew I'd think sex, and he couldn't do that. Gosh, what a mindy F for everyone involved. Now I just got to chill and not be too much. Talk about it, but not too much. Help him, but not too much. It may take another 3 years, but at least now we're moving forward. I also now have an arsenal of sexually explicit things we can do that won't hurt him, thanks to all the men and women who've learned to navigate this with their loved ones. It's a new day, folks. And you apologized for your reaction when you asked him if he could go down on you when you saw his penis, right? Oops, we've both apologized to each other. Oops, one of our conversations after he told me what was going on was about his gift giving. I asked if he does this because he feels he needs to make up for sex, and he said no, that it's just what he likes doing. So long as it's all healthy, that's fine with me. Now on to the next story. Story 4. I told my wife about coworkers faking safety data at our company. Top brass found out and sent legal after us. We still have our jobs, but nothing's changed, and I worry people could get hurt. So my wife and I worked for the same multinational company but in different departments at the same location. Like most couples, we talk about work, complain about coworkers, and workplace drama. I work in a quality control lab, and she handles clients and rubs elbows with the top brass of the company during their weekly meetings and such. She is also a very likable person and friends with them outside of work. I was complaining to her about my coworkers, how some of them don't run quality control checks or ignore them if they fail, and how some of them falsify or completely make up data just to make their job easier. At my company, any of those things are a fireable offense. I also mentioned to her that I had complained about it to people overseeing the lab, but nothing ever comes of it. Well, today after her morning meeting, she was commiserating with her team. Like I said, some of them are the top brass in the company, and some of what I told her about the lab came up. I can't imagine how it came up, but it did, and apparently it didn't seem like it was a big deal in the moment. Near the end of the day, she was called by HR to schedule a meeting with HR and the company legal team. They are flying the legal team from our company HQ to our location for a meeting to discuss any information she knows about the lab practices I mentioned to her. I'm sweating bullets because I have no idea what this means for us in the end. I know I will be mentioned, so I'm going to take heat from someone, and I'm totally worried somebody, maybe me, will be fired. Now for some comments before reading the update. 57. Dude, I'm a quality engineer, and everything you mentioned is definitely not specific to your company. You see it everywhere. Because when something is non-conforming, it usually means action needs to be taken and possibly paperwork. So technicians find it easier to fudge the numbers to avoid the extra work. This is part of the reason why I hate my job. I'm going to assume you work in a highly regulated field, hence the attention from the legal team, but they will quickly find out why your wife knows what she does. Get to you and you'll have to provide evidence to your claims. Your quality manager is going to be asked to provide all inspection documentation, and if you are doing your job correctly, you have nothing to worry about. One thing to know is that people won't know why the legal team showed up. They won't rat you or your wife out. 83001 OP, that's comforting. La vida laica. Not sure what you do, but it sounds like it needs to happen. Big props. No kudos for the company for paying attention to it. Cichlids RAM. Unless the company does nothing about the practices but punishes OP and Mrs. OP for not coming forward sooner. Proxy time to get a lawyer. Legal team from you means a legal team for me. Mom _with _ attitude. Are you the one falsifying data? No? Then I doubt you'll be fired if you reported it to higher-ups. I would start documenting what you said to who and when you said it. If you have it written in email form, send those emails to your personal email address and save them as if your job depended on it, because it might. 83001 OP. I'm a bit worried about retaliation for being the one to say something. I definitely don't falsify results. Mom _with _ attitude. If I ran a company, I would be happy that someone spoke up. What grounds can they fire you on? Telling the truth. But I am not a company owner, so really have no idea what will happen. I think employers can fire anyone for any reason, bogus or not. Maybe start polishing your resume and applying for other jobs just to be on the safe side. Good luck. Han, wishing you the best. Update. It turns out that multiple people had reported it to the anonymous hotline for our company. The legal team met with my wife because she was the only person they knew had knowledge of the events. 1 month later, we both still have our jobs. No retaliation, which was my biggest fear, but nothing has changed. The people falsifying data are still employed and continuing their same practices as mentioned previously. We are an international company, HQ in the US, but are managed locally for the most part. One comment asked if I worked at Boeing, which gave me endless laughter considering the headlines that month. We don't. However, we do work in an industry where people can be seriously harmed if the lab gives inaccurate results. I think the local upper management is keeping a lid on things because we are short-staffed and reluctant to fire skilled personnel. So I'm reporting infractions to my supervisor and documenting each incident, and I plan to turn it over to HQ if nothing changes in the next week. Now for some comments. CM. Look into whistleblower protections. I believe your employment can be protected, and a percentage of a potential government fine added to you. 83001 OP. I'll look into that. Last month I was worried about my job, but now it has become so egregious that I'd rather work in a research lab making a fraction. Someone else said, contact the FBI. I thought it was silly at first, but maybe it's actually warranted. Madam CM, it doesn't necessarily need to be the FBI, I don't think. Just whatever regulatory agency would oversee the industry, FDA, maybe even OSHA, etc. Northern Planer. Sounds like a third-party testing laboratory of some kind. 83001 OP. I believe so. I would assume companies do their own testing then send their samples to us to confirm results. Siren SC. So what you're saying is we all need to avoid at all costs so we are not seriously harmed. Thanks for the heads up. 8301 OP. More along the lines that lower-level employees that are in direct contact with the materials could be harmed due to poor lab testing, but if a truck had an accident or say a rail car went off the tracks, you would need accurate chemical information to protect the population and environment. Peter 0955837. The Lion, the Witch, and the Audacity. How is there more? We do work in an industry where people can be seriously harmed if the lab gives inaccurate results. The people falsifying data are still employed and continuing their same practices. Honestly, not a surprise. Pathetic how companies are not being responsible. Ginger Encore Anarchy. Yep, legal was flown in to put the fear of God into OP and his wife to make sure they didn't talk to anyone else and kept it contained to just them and no one at family gatherings or the errant reporter, etc. Also, it's only been a month, and there will absolutely be quiet retaliations. They're going to be passed over for promotions, and OP is probably on top of the layoff list as soon as they're not short-staffed. Match a magpie, yes, as noble as OP might be trying to be, the company will try to protect itself. OP and wife need to find new jobs stat. Peter 95837. The company has proven they are protecting themselves and will not be taking any responsibility. OP and his wife really need to find a new place cause working in this place will not be beneficial for their sakes. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Fiancé insisted I get baptized before our wedding, despite my atheism, and now I'm questioning whether to continue our relationship. I, 35F, and my fiancé, Todd, 41M, met over a decade ago, and we have a mutual friend group. We started dating last year and got engaged last month. Generally speaking, he treats me like a queen. He spoils me a lot, and I appreciate it always. He's usually respectful, kind, communicative, and patient with me. This started to change, and I want to say it started to change once the ring was accepted. I need to be clear, I don't much care to get married. I am perfectly fine with not. My parents aren't married, but they have been in love and together for over 40 years. My siblings are all but one unmarried, but in seemingly happy relationships, each at least for 5 years. But Todd is Christian and is of the mind that two people eventually need to get married to be happy. We talked about it at length, both before we were a couple and after we started dating. I was clear that I don't want or need a ring, but if it's important to a partner I come to love, then whatever, I will do a small wedding. He was overjoyed when he proposed and I said yes in front of pretty much everyone in our little world, but later said that I didn't seem excited enough and it felt like I didn't want to marry him. I said I love him, and if he wants a marriage, then sure, but to say I want to marry, I know he wants to, and if that's what he wants, and since it doesn't matter to me either way, the math was easy. Let's get married. I said it sort of jokingly to lighten the mood, but he didn't like that at all, and nearly every other day he would find a way to ask me if I really wanted to marry him, or he would simply say that he feels like I don't. I suggested couples therapy, as it seems to really be on his mind and troubling him, and he said he's done therapy before and doesn't need to do it again. Then last week, on our usual date night, he said he had something really big to ask me. Call it a favor if that makes it better, and asked me to come to his church and get baptized. I stared at him. I am atheist and have been since I was mid-20s. He has known that for years, and we've always been respectful of each other's beliefs. I told him I couldn't do that. Baptism is supposed to be sacred and with a true heart for that faith, and I simply would be a liar if I said I wanted to live for his God because I frankly don't. He argued that it's just a splash of water and some words, and since he wants it before our wedding and I don't care about religion either way, this should be easy. I refused again, explaining that I do care about religion. My majors were world religions and anthropology. I care a lot, and it would be dishonest to his God and our community for me to dedicate my life to his religion outwardly but not inwardly. I said it felt disrespectful to his faith and the people who truly live it. He got angry with me. Oh, so you're okay disrespecting me though? And when I asked what he meant, he said to drop it and change the subject. I pressed more, but he raised his voice. I said, drop it, loud enough for others to turn and look at us. He'd been robotic around me since, days up in his study all night, sleeps on his study couch, goes to every service and event/small group gathering his church has, which is most weekday nights and Saturday morning as well as Sunday, and has been inviting me to every single one. He hadn't done that since we started dating. He did it then. I said I respect his beliefs and will go to something like a wedding or christening or baptism, but not a simple service or event. When he asked me just a few minutes ago tonight, I reminded him of the above, and he just dropped into our couch and sobbed. And when I went over to comfort him and talk to him, he pushed me away and left, muttering something about running late for service. His sister, Esther, texted me to ask what happened, and I gave a brief summary, and she texted back that I am being a jerk and one service isn't going to make me burst into flames and it's important to Todd. So am I being a bonehead? Am I crazy to think that this pressure is a deal breaker? I do love him, but this version of him is not only a stranger to me but a weight on me. But aren't people supposed to work through that hard stuff to get on in a relationship? Edit to update. He texted me a few minutes ago saying when he gets home he wants to have a serious talk. I explained that my best friend is over, so it will have to wait, and he replied, no, tell her to leave. Give her my love, but this is serious. I talked with my bestie, F35, and read some of the comments here and told him no indeed. He can go home to his parents, and he is welcome to come in and pack a bag and leave because Bess is here for me right now, and I need her here for me right now. He hasn't responded. Edit to respond to things that have come up a lot. Either in messages or comments, he has never raised a hand to me. He would never. And if it's not for the reason I used to think that he's not a dick, it would at least be because I'm a military brat, both parents. So not only am I trained to defend myself well, but my parents, would not take kindly. A lot of people brought up kids. I can't get pregnant. I did want kids, and then this happened, so now I am okay with the idea of not having any. He said he was okay with that too, and we talked about just being dog rescue people. My family likes him. My father, a pastor, loves the guy. But no, I haven't told him about this yet. He is non-denominational and goes to a megachurch in our state. Literally thousands of people. No, it is not a requirement for marriage at his church for me to convert. Oops, this is what confuses me most. If it's such an important part of his life, how is he okay with me lying and insincerity? Devoting my life to Christ? I am not against people who have faith, but those that I know who do, truly do, beyond platitudes in the mainstream, are kind and loving and would be offended so much if someone faked it and lied about it and gone through sacred rites and the like. It doesn't make sense why he keeps switching sides on it. Oops, that is terrifying. I was clear when I left the church eons ago that I am not and will not follow that faith. He never hinted once that I can think of to do what you're saying, but it really makes me think this might be exactly what he's doing. I can't get pregnant, so kids are out of the equation, but I couldn't bear it if he tried to push me more into his church life. I'm involved a bit to make him happy. I do help at certain events and such. I have skills they sometimes need and not at all opposed to a food or clothing or back-to-school drive and the like. I figured it less about it being a church event and more a community event where we helped people. Update 1. Last week, I posted about a problem between myself, F35, and my fiancé, Todd, M41. Because despite having been respectful of each other's beliefs until now, he is Christian and I am an atheist. He now wants me to get baptized. Came to a head, and he stormed out, so I called my BFF to keep me company since I was pretty sad and emotional. I do a lot for him and Bess the bestie, and a lot of you here helped me see that the relationship, as is, either needs to have serious changes to it or it needs to end. Logical, but logic is hard to cling to when you're heartbroken. I think I already knew he wouldn't change anything for me. I did text him that night that he needs to go back to his parents' house. The house we live in is mine, and that I needed space. Guess he and his sister gave his parents an alternate version of events because they came by that night anyway. All of them, his mom, dad, sister Esther, and him. He had a key, so he just walked in. Bess and I are drinking on the couch watching Netflix. I asked what he was doing here, and his family came into the room behind him. I asked, "What's going on?" The way he looked at me is unexplainable, but his mom pushed by him and just yanked me into a very aggressive hug. She said that they were here to talk as a family and have a family meeting and then told Bess she needed to leave. Bess refused. His mom turns to me to ask me to have Bess leave. I refuse. It's late and I'm in no state to talk. Anything else, please leave. It devolves into passive-aggressive disapproval that I won't take guidance from the man I plan to marry. His parents, his father is a pastor, sat down to give me what felt like the whole pre-planned spiel about how I'm an adult and need to act like one and kicking a man out of his home for doing the right thing as a tantrum. His dad once even said that he is so disappointed in me and will be telling my father, also a pastor, about this. Got to be honest, I was dumbfounded for 85% of this and then, finally, I guess it was the booze, started to laugh and told them to get out. His dad refused and called me volatile and suggested I get counseling. I told him this is my house and I will call the police and to get out. It was the first time I cussed in front of them. Pearls were clutched. I was called trashy and beheld her phone like, "Okay, I'm calling the cops. She asked you to leave." I heard his dad say, "You're not marrying that," as they left, and they muttered other hurtful things, making a whole thing of them being sad and disappointed by me. They left. Todd packed a bag and left with them. He continued to text me invites to services, "It will help you," stating that he is concerned about me and the path I am choosing, that his parents aren't sure he should marry me, but he loves me and wants what's best for me. I told him I need space and to leave me alone, but he kept texting. I said that the wedding is off. Sunday, when I got home from running errands, he was on the porch crying. He had a handwritten letter that he wanted to read to me, but I said absolutely not and told him to go away. He kept asking me to think about what I am doing and how my choices affect more than just myself and more. I pointed to my doorbell cam and said I have footage of me repeatedly asking him to leave, and B was recording the night his parents and sister and he ganged up on me. Go away! He threw his hand up like he was going to strike me, and I just screamed. I didn't even mean to. It was so sudden and it scared me. He went to start apologizing, but a neighbor came out to see what was happening, and he just left. I texted him to never come back ever. He is no longer welcome. I will mail his stuff to his parents, but he is no longer welcome on my property ever again. He tried to apologize, but I no longer care to hear any of his words. He did leave his written letter and I have read it, so is Bess. She keeps telling me it's just manipulation. Boo-hoo. It just breaks me. The locks get changed tomorrow. Bess is helping me pack his father is picking up his stuff tonight, and I am just sitting here replaying the past week and a half in my head over and over. I know it's pathetic, but I'm shattered. I haven't been able to really sleep yet, and I feel like I don't even reside in my own body anymore. Just going through the motions. Bess is staying with me. I've been getting texts and social media comments about how disgusting I am. Like my notifications just went insane over the weekend. This is just a nightmare, and I'm not even sure how to wade through this. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Wife leaves me and my daughter for a rich guy. 6 years later, karma hits, and she calls back because she is homeless and wants to get back. I'm a 32-year-old man living with my 6-year-old daughter, Rosie. We've been on our own for the past 3 years since my wife, Cassie, left us. It's been challenging at times, but Rosie and I have managed to build a good life together. Rosie is the light of my life. She's a bright, curious kid who loves to read and draw. Every evening after work, we have our special daddy-daughter time where we read stories together or play board games. On weekends, we often go to the park or have picnics. I've worked hard to create a stable, loving home for her. I work from home as a software developer, which allows me to be there for Rosie before and after school. We have a good routine going. I drop her off at school in the mornings, work during the day, then pick her up in the afternoons. We have dinner together every night, and I help her with homework. It's not always easy being a single parent, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Rosie and I have our little traditions that make our days special. Every Monday we have pancake night, where we make funny-shaped pancakes for dinner. On Fridays we have movie night with popcorn and blanket forts. These small things have helped us bond and create a sense of normalcy after Cassie left. I've also made sure to surround Rosie with positive female role models. My sister comes over often to spend time with her, and Rosie has a great relationship with her teacher at school. I want her to have strong women in her life, even if her mother isn't around. Yesterday, while I was working, I got an unexpected phone call. It was Cassie. I was shocked to hear from her after all this time. She said she wanted to talk and asked if we could meet up. I was hesitant, but agreed to hear her out. Cassie told me she wants to come back home and be a family again. She said she's made a huge mistake in leaving us and deeply regrets it. When I asked why she suddenly wanted to return after 3 years of no contact, she admitted that she's currently homeless and living in a shelter. She said she has nowhere else to go and wants another chance with us. I was shocked and conflicted. On one hand, Cassie is Rosie's mother, and I know Rosie misses having a mom around sometimes. But on the other hand, Cassie abandoned us without a second thought and hasn't been in touch at all for 3 years. I don't know if I can trust her not to leave again. I told Cassie I needed time to think about it and process everything. She seemed desperate and pleaded with me to let her come home, but I stood firm on needing time. I said I'd get back to her in a few days after I've had a chance to consider things. Now I'm torn about what to do. Part of me feels like I should give Cassie another chance for Rosie's sake, but another part feels like Cassie only wants to come back because she has nowhere else to go, not because she genuinely wants to be with us. I'm worried about disrupting the stable life Rosie and I have built. I haven't told Rosie about any of this yet. I don't want to get her hopes up in case I decide not to let Cassie come back. Rosie occasionally asks about her mom, but she's adjusted well to our life together and seems happy overall. I know Cassie is in a desperate situation, but I also need to protect myself and Rosie emotionally. I'm not sure I can ever fully trust Cassie again after she abandoned us. At the same time, I feel guilty about potentially turning away Rosie's mother when she needs help. I've worked hard to build a good life for Rosie and myself after Cassie left. I got promoted at work, which allowed me to buy a small house in a nice neighborhood with good schools. We have a little garden where we grow vegetables together. Rosie has made friends in the neighborhood and is thriving at school. I'm worried that bringing Cassie back into our lives could disrupt all of this. But I also remember how devastated Rosie was when Cassie first left. She cried for her mom every night for weeks. It took months of therapy and lots of love and patience to help her adjust. Part of me wonders if having her mom back could heal some of those old wounds for Rosie. Then again, what if Cassie leaves again? I don't think Rosie could handle another abandonment, and I'm not sure I could either. The pain of Cassie leaving was almost unbearable the first time. I'm not sure I'm strong enough to go through that again. I've thought about setting some conditions if I do let Cassie come back. Maybe she could stay with us temporarily while she gets back on her feet, but not move in permanently right away. Or maybe she could start with supervised visits with Rosie before we consider anything more. But I'm not sure if that's fair to anyone involved. I've also considered offering Cassie financial help to get set up in her own place without moving back in with us. But I worry that might give her false hope about reconciling or that she might take advantage of my generosity. This situation has brought up so many complicated emotions. Anger at Cassie for abandoning us, pity for her current situation, fear of disrupting Rosie's life, guilt over potentially turning away someone in need, hope that maybe we could be a family again, distrust based on past betrayal. So, Reddit, should I give her another chance or protect the life Rosie and I have built? I could really use some outside perspectives on this situation. How do I balance doing what's best for Rosie with protecting ourselves emotionally? Is there a middle ground I'm not seeing? Any advice would be appreciated as I try to navigate this difficult decision. Update 1. Thank you all for your responses to my original post. I've spent the last couple of days thinking things over and trying to decide what to do about Cassie's request to come back. I still haven't made up my mind. This whole situation has brought up a lot of old memories and feelings that I thought I'd put behind me. I found myself reflecting on my history with Cassie and how we got to this point. Cassie and I met through an arranged marriage set up by our families. I was 25 and she was 23 at the time. Neither of us had dated much before, so we were both nervous but hopeful about building a life together. Our families were close friends and thought we'd be a good match. I remember feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety on our wedding day. Cassie looked beautiful in her white dress, and I felt proud to be standing next to her. Our families were beaming with joy as we said our vows. We both promised to love and support each other through good times and bad. The first year of our marriage was actually pretty good. We were getting to know each other, figuring out how to live together, and generally enjoying married life. We had some normal newlywed disagreements, but overall things were positive. We'd have long talks about our hopes and dreams for the future. We'd go on weekend trips to explore nearby cities. We even started talking about having kids. About a year after we got married, Rosie was born. We were thrilled to become parents, and those first few months with our new baby were some of the happiest of my life. I remember holding Rosie for the first time in the hospital, feeling overwhelmed with love. Cassie seemed to take to motherhood well, and I loved being a dad. But then things started to go downhill. When Rosie was about 6 months old, I unexpectedly lost my job. The company I worked for went through major layoffs, and my whole department was cut. I tried hard to find a new job, but the job market was tough at that time. I was unemployed for several months, and we started to struggle financially. Cassie was working as an administrative assistant, so we had some income, but it wasn't enough to comfortably support our family of 3. We had to dip into our savings and cut back on a lot of expenses. We couldn't afford date nights or trips anymore. We were constantly stressed about money. The financial stress started to take a toll on our relationship. Cassie became more and more bitter about the situation. She'd make cutting remarks about me not contributing financially. I was already feeling horrible about being unemployed, and her comments just made me feel worse. I was applying to jobs constantly and doing some freelance work when I could find it, but it wasn't enough in Cassie's eyes. I remember one particularly bad fight where Cassie screamed at me that I was a failure as a husband and father. She said she was tired of carrying the whole family on her shoulders. I tried to explain how hard I was trying to find work, but she wouldn't listen. She stormed out and didn't come home until late that night. What I didn't know at the time was that Cassie had started cheating on me with a wealthy businessman she met through her job. I was so focused on trying to find work and take care of Rosie that I was oblivious to the signs. Cassie would work late or go out with friends, and I never suspected anything. Looking back, there were red flags I should have noticed. Cassie started dressing up more for work and wearing more makeup. She was constantly texting and would hide her phone screen from me. She became very protective of her privacy, but I was too caught up in my own stress to see what was happening. This went on for about 2 years. I eventually found a new full-time job, but by then the damage to our marriage was done. Cassie had become cold and distant. We fought constantly about money and other issues. I tried to salvage things, suggesting counseling and date nights, but Cassie wasn't interested. I remember one night I tried to talk to Cassie about how we could improve our relationship. I suggested we try to reconnect, maybe plan a weekend away, just the two of us. Cassie just laughed bitterly and said it was too late for that. I didn't understand what she meant at the time. Then one day, shortly after Rosie's 3rd birthday, I came home from work to find Cassie gone. She'd packed up her things and left a note saying she was leaving me for another man. I was blindsided and devastated. The note was brief and cold. It said she'd found someone who could give her the life she deserved. She said she wasn't happy with me anymore and didn't want to pretend. She wrote that she knew I'd take good care of Rosie and that it was better this way. There was no apology, no explanation of where she was going. I remember sinking to the floor and sobbing as I read the note over and over. I couldn't believe Cassie could just walk away from our family like that. I felt like my whole world had been shattered. The next few months were a blur of pain and confusion. I was heartbroken and struggling to understand how Cassie could just abandon our family like that. I had to figure out how to be a single dad while dealing with my own emotional turmoil. My parents helped out a lot during that time, watching Rosie when I needed to work. Explaining to Rosie why her mommy was gone was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. She would cry and ask when mommy was coming home. It broke my heart to see her so confused and hurt. We went through divorce proceedings, and it was finalized about 6 months after Cassie left. She didn't fight me for custody of Rosie at all. In fact, she made it clear she didn't want any parental responsibilities. That hurt, almost as much as the abandonment, knowing she could so easily walk away from our child. My family tried to talk to Cassie's family about the situation, but they completely took her side. They blamed me for driving her away by losing my job and claimed I must have been a terrible husband. It was clear they were going to support whatever story Cassie told them. I later found out that Cassie had told her family I was emotionally abusive and that she had to leave for her own safety. It was a complete lie, but they believed her without question. They cut off all contact with me and Rosie, and that brings us to the present situation. It's been 3 years since Cassie left, and now she wants to come back because she has nowhere else to go. Part of me still cares for her and hates the thought of her being homeless, but a bigger part of me is angry and mistrustful after everything that's happened. I've decided I need to talk to Cassie face to face before I make any decisions. I want to hear exactly what happened with the man she left us for, and why she thinks she deserves another chance now. I called her earlier today, and we've arranged to meet at a cafe tomorrow afternoon to talk things over. I'm nervous about the meeting and unsure what to expect. I don't know if I'll get honest answers from Cassie or if she'll try to manipulate me, but I feel like I need more information before I can decide whether to let her back into our lives or not. I'll update again after I've met with Cassie. Thanks again to everyone who's offered advice and support. It really helps to have outside perspectives on this complicated situation. Update 2. I met with Cassie at a cafe as planned. I chose a place far from our neighborhood, so there was no chance of Rosie seeing us together. I didn't want to get her hopes up or confuse her until I'd made a final decision. When Cassie arrived, I was shocked by her appearance. She looked thin and tired, with dark circles under her eyes. Her clothes were worn, and she seemed jumpy and nervous. It was a stark contrast to the polished, confident woman who'd left us 3 years ago. We got coffee and found a quiet table in the corner to talk. Cassie launched into her story right away. She told me about her relationship with the wealthy man she'd left us for, who I'll call JN. Apparently, JN had pursued Cassie aggressively when they first met. He showered her with expensive gifts and took her to fancy restaurants. He promised her a life of luxury if she left me for him. Cassie admitted she was seduced by the idea of never having to worry about money again. When she first moved in with JN, things were good. He bought her designer clothes, took her on exotic vacations, and treated her like a princess. Cassie said she convinced herself she was in love and that she'd made the right choice in leaving us. But over time, JN's true nature started to show. He was controlling and had a volatile temper. He monitored Cassie's phone and limited her contact with friends and family. He expected her to always look perfect and accompany him to business events but got angry if other men paid attention to her. Cassie said she started to realize JN saw her more as a trophy than a partner. He wasn't interested in her thoughts or feelings. When she tried to talk about missing Rosie, he'd dismiss her concerns and say she was better off without the burden of a child. Things came to a head about 6 months ago. JN met a young model at a party and became infatuated with her. Within weeks, he told Cassie he was leaving her for this new woman. He kicked Cassie out of his house with barely any notice. Cassie had no job and little savings of her own. Everything had been in JN's name. She couch-surfed with acquaintances for a while but eventually ran out of options. For the past 2 months, she's been staying at a women's shelter. She described the shelter as crowded and depressing. She has to share a room with 3 other women, and there's little privacy. The food is basic, and there are strict rules about when residents can come and go. Cassie said she feels unsafe there and is desperate to leave. As Cassie told her story, she broke down crying several times. She said she deeply regrets leaving us and knows she made a huge mistake. She apologized over and over for abandoning Rosie and begged me to give her another chance. I listened to everything Cassie had to say, but I felt myself getting angry. It was clear to me that she was only coming back now because she had nowhere else to go. If JN hadn't dumped her, she never would have contacted us again. I told Cassie that while I'm sorry for what she's been through, I can't welcome her back into our home or our lives. I explained that there's no guarantee she wouldn't leave again if another opportunity came along. I'm not willing to risk Rosie or myself getting hurt like that again. I reminded Cassie that she walked away from Rosie without a second thought. She never called, never sent birthday cards, never asked how Rosie was doing. I told her that Rosie and I have built a good life together, and I'm not going to disrupt that. Cassie became hysterical at this point. She sobbed and pleaded, saying she'd do anything for another chance. She said she had no one else to turn to and didn't know what she'd do if I turned her away. It was hard, but I stood firm. I told Cassie that her actions have consequences and she needs to figure out how to get back on her feet on her own. I said I'd be willing to help her find resources for job training or housing assistance, but I couldn't take her back into our family. I left the cafe feeling drained but certain I'd made the right choice. On the drive home, I thought about how to approach things with Rosie. I decided to be honest with her in an age-appropriate way. I'll explain that I saw her mom, but that her mom still isn't able to be part of our family right now. I'll reassure Rosie that it's not her fault and that I'll always be there for her. It's been a roller coaster of emotions dealing with this situation. Part of me will always care about Cassie, but I know I can't trust her again. My priority has to be protecting Rosie and the stable life we've created together. I plan to reach out to a family therapist to help us navigate this situation. I want to make sure Rosie has the support she needs to process her feelings about her mom. Thank you to everyone who's followed this story and offered advice. Your support has meant a lot as I've navigated this difficult situation. I'm looking forward to moving on and focusing on raising Rosie to be a strong, happy person despite the challenges we've faced. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Narcissistic mom and jealous sister tried to trick my husband into leaving me for my infertile sister. Their plan was for sis to marry him, take my kids, and cut me off. My life is just so messed up. I really don't know where to start. I had an abusive childhood, and it took me 20 years to get over it, but now it feels like I am back to square one and would have to start the healing journey again. I am 31F. My mom has been abusive crap ever since we were born. We are 3 siblings. I, brother, 29M, sister, 28F. Our dad left mom when I was 5 after a massive blowout. Mom always had anger issues, and she would go nuts even at minor inconveniences. The earliest memory of my childhood is the physical fights between mom and dad. Mom would throw things at him and he would try to dodge it initially, but after being hit and hurt, he would also throw stuff at mom. It might sound funny to some of you, but watching this as a kid is scary. They would get hurt and sometimes bleed. It was so traumatic for us to watch this fighting match between our parents. Most of these fighting nights we would cry ourselves to sleep. Then one day Dad left. I don't even remember which was his last hug before leaving. After that, our life became more terrible until now. The man in the house was our dad, and we didn't feel threatened. After he left, there were just random guys showing up at our house. Some of them gave me and my sister weird looks, and some would fight with mom and break things. As I grew up, some of them would try to grope me when mom wasn't around. I was a little kid. I didn't know what it was, but I didn't feel right about it. Mom was always in a bad mood. It was just impossible to have any confrontation with her. She barely had time for us. We had to do most of our stuff by ourselves, and being the eldest one, I had to face the brunt. Mom had a drinking habit and she came home late. When we woke up, she would still be asleep. I had to make breakfast and school lunch for myself and my siblings. When we came back from school, Mom was out for work, and then she would come late at night. My brother would help me sometimes, but mostly I was on my own. On weekends, she would bring men home and that would be worse. She would be locked up inside her room for most of the weekend until she heard us fighting. She would come out, yell at us, or beat me and my brother, and then would push back to a room. My brother ran away from home when he was 11. My mom didn't blink an eye over it. My brother was working at a store just a mile away, but Mom never reported him or brought him back home. After that, I also mustered some courage and ran away, but she reported me. I was brought back home by the cops. I tried to tell the cops that I didn't want to be home, but I was too scared to tell them the whole truth. When my sister turned 12, she also ran away with her 18-year-old boyfriend. Again, Mom didn't report to the cops. I was 15 and I got rebellious. I fought with Mom as to why she would let others move out but not me. She shed fake tears and said I was her favorite child and she can't live without me. But the truth was she didn't let me go because I was taking care of the house, making dinners and breakfast, cleaning the house and doing other household chores. She was exploiting me, whereas my brother and sister were of no use to her, so she got rid of them. I was dumbass to not realize this earlier, so I just ran away from the house and just vanished. It's been 15 years since then. I have never seen my mom's face again. Now I'm married and have 2 daughters. Sometimes when I look back, I cannot fathom how could my mom let those things happen to us. I mean, I am so protective towards my girls. I am always vigilant, even when they are around their grandfather and uncles. I've been in touch with my siblings since I got married 10 years ago. My brother is also married but has no kids, while my sister is single. My brother is in low contact with both of us and only calls/texts on important occasions. When my first daughter was born, my dad texted me. Apparently, he had been following all of us on social media through a fake account. He called and apologized for abandoning us. Initially, I was mad at him because he freed himself while leaving us in hell. He said he had no choice but to run because he was done with Mom's abuses and violence. He had a choice. He could have reported Mom and got our custody, but he chose to run away from his responsibilities. I was seeking therapy all this while, and eventually I got over it and forgave him, but I'm in minimum contact with him, just a few email/phone calls in a year. I am closer to my sister, and we talk more often, maybe once a month or sooner. We 3 siblings look out for each other in times of need. 5 to 6 years back, Mom reached out to all 3 of us and said we should reconcile. My brother slammed the door in her face and said he had no business with her. I did not answer her calls/texts. She didn't show up at my door. However, my sister chose to reconcile with Mom. She said she wanted to get over it, and her therapist told her that forgiveness and reconciliation are one way of healing from past trauma. I don't know how true it was or how much it has worked for her, but in my case, I was adamant about not having mom back in my life. Next month is mom's 50th birthday, and my sister came to me with a proposal of reconciling with mom. I was shocked at her request because she knows what pain I've been through. Surely my brother and sister also had a painful childhood, but they had me as the protective shield. I made them food, did their laundry, cleaned them up, and looked after them. I had no one doing it for me. I was the one who suffered the most. I asked my sister if she remembered how mom used to beat me even though I did all the household work. She said she remembers everything, but it's time to erase those sad memories because mom is a changed person now. I said I was not going to reconcile. She got mad at me for still holding a grudge against mom. I asked her if she had forgotten what I had been through. She says she remembers every bit of it, and it was horrifying back then, but we should forget about it. It's been so many years now. She says I'm being dramatic and exaggerating the entire stuff. She is like, everyone goes through this stuff, but no one takes the grudge to the deathbed like you were doing. You are blowing it out of proportion and unnecessarily giving air to your feeling of hatred towards mom. I tried to make her understand that it was so difficult for me to come to terms with my past, and now she wants me to reconcile with the same horrendous past. She said, we are family, and that's what a family does. Forgive each other. She is trying to guilt-trip me that I am being unreasonable for holding on to the past. She's mocking me, saying my therapy had been a waste of money because I'm still not over my past. I discussed this with my husband, and he is also asking me to move on and reconcile. Now I don't know if my feeling of resentment is even valid or if I'm being overly dramatic, like my sister is saying. Update 1. Hello everyone. Thanks for validating my feelings. It was reassuring that I am not the only one who has faced this kind of rough childhood and definitely not the only one who was holding this up. Everyone who said that they have been through this, I am sorry, guys. It's a terrible thing to experience. Hope you all come strong. And you guys are right. I don't need to explain my feelings to everyone. Not everyone is going to understand it, even though they might have witnessed my turmoil. My sister and I usually talk over the phone and rarely meet because she lives 4 hours away. 2 weeks back, she showed up at my house unannounced. She hugged me unusually long and said she missed me. I asked her what's the matter. She said nothing, it's just the sisterly love. For the whole time, she was circling back on the topic of family, importance of forgiveness, and how family should have each other's back. I said, wait a minute. If you are trying to manipulate me to reconcile with mom, then that's not happening. She tried to be mom's advocate and said, mom misses you so much. Why do you have so much hatred for her when all of us have undergone the same traumatic childhood? I said, I'm not responsible for how others feel about their experience, but I am not letting this go. Besides, my brother has also not resumed contact with mom. So why am I only the one for not having mom back in my life? She said it was because mom wanted to be around her grandchildren, and I was the only one who had children among our 3 siblings. I said, I'm still not sold. The woman who was so reckless with her own children, how could she be trusted with her grandchildren? Moreover, if mom misses me so much, then why has she never contacted me? She asked me if mom contacted me, would I forgive her? I said I don't know, and I really didn't want her to contact me, so dropped the idea of sending mom to my door. She stood up and said, I'm such a bummer. My husband was in the living room watching TV with the girls. While leaving, she went to him and said, how are you putting up with this woman? She's such a dud. They both chuckled. I gave him a look, and she said she was just being funny. As my mom's birthday approached, my sister pestered me to show up at the party, but I set my foot down and said if she insisted any further, I was going to cut her off too. She backed off, but she was not very happy about it. I said, F off with your opinion. I don't care. Yesterday was mom's birthday, and today she showed up at my house. When I answered the door and found her standing, I felt I saw a ghost. She was still her narcissistic, self-centered woman. She barged into the house, saying, where are my grandchildren? My girls were playing right there. I blocked her from reaching out to my children and asked them to rush into their room. Mom got mad at me that I was behaving as if she was a criminal. I said, indeed. She was a criminal and should have been held had I reported her to the cops 20 years back. She said I was vindictive, just like my dad. To piss her off, I said, yeah, that's why I'm in touch with Dad and not her. She freaked out knowing I was talking to Dad, who abandoned us. She tried to guilt-trip me that Dad abandoned us while she worked hard to raise us, and I was still soft on Dad and resented her. I said, yes, that's what I am doing. She called me an emotionally weak person and said she was only there for her granddaughters. I said, I am not letting my daughters meet such a cruel woman who let her children get groped by her boyfriends. She got offended at this and started shouting at me. I was so right. She hasn't changed a bit in the last 20 years. I asked her to leave or else I'll call the cops on her. She left with a bitter face. This happened like 4 hours ago, and I am still mad. My face is still red with anger. I mean, this is the woman my sister had been vouching for. I am so proud of my decision to cut her out of my life. Update 2. Hello all. Sorry for not updating it sooner. I was dealing with a lot of mess. Let me start where I left off. That night when my husband came home, I told him about Mom's visit. He got mad at me for misbehaving with Mom and chasing her out. He yelled, "Why can't you be like my sister and move on?" He was like, when both of you had the same past, how come she moved on, and you were still stuck to it? After a while, my sister called, and she was also mad that I was rude to Mom. She said that it was unfair that Dad gets to be in my life despite abandoning us, but Mom is cut off. She was arguing that even though Mom was a little rude towards us, yet she was the one who raised us and not Dad. I said, I knew Dad was also wrong in abandoning us and not fighting for us, but he came to me and said sorry and apologized for his mistakes, unlike Mom who was still her narcissistic self and yet wanted me to forgive her. Forgiveness doesn't work like that. Is it too much to ask for a sorry after she had tortured me throughout my childhood? Sister said I was too egoistic and hung up. I was upset that no one understood me, and even my husband was dismissing my feelings. I even went into self-doubt that maybe it's me because the rest of everyone is on one side. For the next 1 week, my husband was unusually silent. I also didn't make the move because I was upset too. Then a week later, he said he wanted to confess something before it's too late. My heart sank. You know how this kind of confessions end up. He asked me to hear him out completely before taking any decision. I said sure. He told me that he went to my mom's 50th birthday party hosted by my sister. I flipped out like hell. Why did you do this? It was no less than cheating on me. He said my sister texted him that night after she left our place. As per his story, Sister told my husband that Mom was crying herself to sleep because I was not letting her meet her grandchildren. My husband had told her that he would try to convince me to reconcile. Then she insisted he attend Mom's birthday party to cover up for me, and he did that. There were pictures of him celebrating with them. No red flags in the pictures. However, a few days later, 2 days before he made the confession, Mom calls him up for dinner and says she wants to discuss something. She told my husband not to inform me about it. This didn't tell me anything, and went to meet her. Mom was late, but my sister was before time. She was already drunk and had ordered a couple of drinks for my husband. She made moves at him, flirting with him and bad-mouthing me. She called me egotistic and vindictive. He said he was sorry for yelling at me that night, and whatever he said was not his words. He has been fed that by my sister and my mother. He said he realized their evilness only when he went for dinner with them 2 days back. He thought that my sister was making moves at him because she was drunk, but it was all planned. He called up Mom to ask her to hurry up because my sister was drunk and she was acting touchy. Mom didn't answer the call and texted him to drop my sister at her house. My husband insisted that she come and take her daughter away, and he was not going to take her home in a drunken state. Mom showed up in 10 minutes, which meant she was around. My husband insisted that they leave because my sister was too drunk, but my sister said she was feeling light after throwing up and they could continue the dinner. She continued to flirt with him. My mother supported her. He felt she was acting up. My mother tried to put ideas in his mind that they two look so sweet together and it would be so great if my sister and my husband got together. My sister has a medical condition, and doctors have said she cannot conceive. That's the reason she hasn't married. My mom said it would be the best thing for my sister to get married to my husband and get custody of my girls. In that way, my mom could meet her grandchildren with her favorite daughter and son-in-law. My husband walked away after that. Since that night, my sister has been texting him, asking him out for dinner. She even asked him to come over to her place. She has also been sending him pictures of herself in the changing room and mirror selfies with duck pout lips. Gross. This is his version of the story, but I have seen all the messages by myself and my husband's reply to that. I asked him if he wanted my sister. He said no way. If he was interested, he would have cheated by now. I said, you have cheated on me by attending my mother's party and going to dinners with them behind my back. But I'll deal with it later. First, I need to deal with these two witches. He apologized profusely and said he was not going to get manipulated any further by them. He asked me to forgive. After a lot of yelling, I did forgive him on the condition that he had to call them out for their BS in front of me. He dialed my sister in front of me and asked her to come over to our house with Mom. Mom and sister arrived thinking my husband was going to leave me. My husband redid the whole incident again in front of them. My sister denied some of his allegations, but more or less my husband's version was true because both my sister and my mother were embarrassed by the entire episode. I shouted at them and called them names for wrecking my house. My sister started crying and said it was all Mom's idea to get back at me for humiliating her. My sister confessed that when she told my mom about her medical condition, she said, "Why don't you date/marry my husband and ask him to get custody of my daughters? In that way, you can have a husband and children." They had a full-fledged plan to prove me an insolent and irresponsible mom. My mother planned to make my husband cheat on me, and in a fit of rage I would do something outrageous, and they would use my anger against me in getting the custody. My mother sat there frozen like a rock solid. She whispered to my sister that she had done everything to make her sister's life better. My sister yelled that this was not to make her life better but to make my life miserable. She had always hated me. In this time, she went too far to destroy my life. I chased both of them out of my house. Mom got up and left without a word, but my sister held my hands and cried. I said, "I don't have any soft corner for your tears. You're not 13 years old that got manipulated by Mom. You also had an evil heart, and that's why you went behind my husband." She cried and promised that she wouldn't do this again, but I cut her off. She tried to contact me after that, but I blocked her. I told my husband that the only reason I'm forgiving him is because he confessed. Had I found the truth by myself, I would have divorced him right there and wouldn't have let him meet his daughters until they turned 18. He insisted we go for couple therapy to get over this phase. We attended one session and it was helpful. I was super mad at my husband when he told me about the entire stuff. In fact, I doubted him that he had cheated or might be thinking about cheating, but I guess not all men are cheaters. I forgot to mention that he is the reason I was able to put my life together after running away from home. I used to work at his dad's store, and since then, he and his parents have been my family. I'm really grateful to have them in my life. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Busted my wife cheating, so I ended her and a fair partner's marriage. I'm at a complete loss. I don't know what to do. There were signs and I overlooked them. I was blinded by love and never imagined this would happen to me. Not with her, my wife and best friend of nearly 20 years. I work out of town and wasn't supposed to be back until tonight. We were supposed to leave for a 2-week road trip tomorrow. Things were slow at work, so I came home yesterday afternoon. This trip was to give us a little alone time since we've been so busy with family and friends this summer. When I got home, there was a truck in my driveway that I didn't recognize. My neighbor just recently asked me how I like the new truck, but I thought he was mistaken and didn't think much of it. As soon as I could see the truck, I got a terrible gut feeling. I love my wife and trusted her completely, but that feeling was there and strong. I snuck around the side of the house to our bedroom window. It was open, and I could hear them as I got close. I looked in the window, and my worst fear was confirmed. They were right there, completely naked on my bed. I walked away. I've been fighting the urge to do something that I know I will regret. I'm struggling to care what happens to me at this point. I went to my family's cabin for the night and drank everything there. Today, I was on my way home to confront her and decided against it. I'm not ready. All I can feel is anger. all I can think about is violence. I'm not in a good place right now, not good enough to see her. I'm back at the cabin right now. I have a 60-ounce bottle of rum, and I've been staring at it for an hour. I want to get drunk and forget this, but I don't want to get drunk and make bad decisions. I know this is a critical moment in my life, and my actions in the coming days will dictate the rest of my life. That's why I'm here. I need help. I'm not ready to speak to family or friends, so I'm reaching out to strangers. This world update, busted wife cheating. The amount of support and advice I've received is unbelievable. I actually got choked up just realizing how many great people there are out there willing to help a stranger. It gives me a bit of hope for the world at a moment when I needed it most. The downside to all of this support is that I am struggling to respond to people. I have over 600 private messages unread and several hundred comments unread. I want to say thank you to everyone individually, and I'm going to make an effort to do that, but it won't be quick, so I will just start by giving a big thank you to everyone for your kind messages and helpful advice. It really means a lot to me. I have noticed several comments and questions that keep popping up and wanted to provide clarification in addition to my minor update. If you can't tell, I am feeling a lot better today. The pain almost completely went away. I still feel like I've been punched in the gut, but otherwise, I've begun looking to the future. It has been 2 days, so this doesn't seem right to me. Is this a calm before the storm, or am I just freakishly resilient? As for the questions and comments I've received, here are some cliff notes to clarify some things. When I said wife and best friend, I was referring to the 2 roles my wife played in my life. The other guy was not my best friend or even someone I knew. I didn't get a great look at him, but from the quick glance and seeing his vehicle, I don't feel like this is someone I know. We do not have kids. We were planning to have them soon, though. We recently sold our house and were set to move closer to my job in September when the new owners take possession. I am going to thank my neighbor, but I'm going to do it subtly, like he did for me. A lot of people have been asking me about the signs I mentioned overlooking. Off the top of my head, here are a few. She was texting abnormally late at night. She went for after-work drinks with friends regularly. This was not like her, but I was glad that she was being social. She had yoga once a week but was apparently not paying because one of her coworkers was the instructor and she was helping with setup and cleanup. I also thought she was very inflexible for someone who went to yoga. Unknown caller hang-ups. We regularly answer each other's phones if we are closer to it. Several times she had an unknown caller who would hang up as soon as I answered. We get a lot of spam calls, but usually it's a telemarketer or a debt collector looking for the previous owner of the number. Rarely it's a hang-up. The update is a work in progress. When my brother arrived, we had a good long talk. He has been my true best friend, and I realized I need to always remember that and know that he will always be there for me without judgment, the same way I would be for him. He really sets the standard for what a true friendship is, even if we fight on occasion. Since I was supposed to be home last night, I decided to respond to my wife's text. We aren't allowed to have phones on site, so it was reasonable for me to only be texting her. She knows it's easy for me to sneak in some texts. I wrote her and said I needed to go to one of my company's remote sites and wouldn't be able to call her until the end of the weekend. I told her that I would cancel all of the reservations and rebook later. She said she could take her best friend with her this weekend to the romantic bed and breakfast on a vineyard that I booked. I knew it wasn't the best friend she wanted me to think would be going. I told her that I already gave it to my brother and his wife since it was non-refundable, and they would pay me back in a month. This morning, I canceled all of the reservations except the romantic one. My brother is coming with me. Fortunately, the hotel let us switch from the honeymoon suite to a room with 2 beds. There also happens to be a really nice lake and boat rentals nearby, so this just turned into a long overdue fishing trip with my brother. This means I am free for the weekend. I don't have to write her or talk to her for a few days, so that relieves some stress and gives me more time to think. I am currently in the mindset to get a divorce. I honestly can't see it any other way. My brother is supportive of this but has asked me to take a few weeks and speak to someone. His wife has a friend who is a couples counselor and is willing to talk to me on Monday. I don't see it changing my mind, but at least it might help untangle some of this mess for me. I am also taking a bunch of the advice on here and starting to speak to lawyers, at the very least, to prepare for what I think is inevitable. I want to do this right. I've never thought of her as someone who would try to screw me over, but I also never expected her to cheat, so I think I need to be prepared for anything. Thanks again, everyone. I'm going to try to enjoy my weekend as much as possible. Update 2. Busted my wife cheating. A lot has happened in the past few days. I'll start with the less important stuff. My brother, Matt, and I drove nearly 5 hours to the B&B on the vineyard. I really appreciate him being there for me through this. It was more of a venting session than anything, but it really helped clear my head. After spending the better part of the drive whining to him, I just wanted a little alone time, while he wanted to go out for dinner. I stayed in the room and he went out to eat and took me back some food. He also managed to rent a boat for the next day. On Saturday, we hit the water. Owner of the B&B knew about our plans for fishing and was nice enough to pack us a small cooler of food and drinks. It was their way of making the romantic package more useful for two brothers. It was a nice gesture. Fishing wasn't good. We both caught a couple of trout that we had to release due to their size, so the snacks from the B&B worked out great. We stopped fishing at mid-afternoon and then drove around to all of the vineyards and fruit stands, buying food and cases of wine for Matt's wife, Jen. That night, we went for the biggest tomahawk steak we could find. On Sunday, we drove back to Matt's place. He lives in the next town over for me, which is about an hour away from my place. When we arrived, Jen was there, and we all sat and cracked a bottle of white we had chilling in the cooler. This is when the weekend officially ended for me. Jen told me that while we were away, she decided to go spy on my wife. She told me that the guy was at my place on Friday night all night, but on Saturday morning, she managed to get there just as he was leaving. She followed him home and found the apartment where he lived. My wife stayed over there on Saturday night, the same time she was sending me text messages saying she loves me and misses me. Jen said that she was splitting her time between visiting family who live in my town and stalking my wife. She said that she happened to catch my wife leaving his apartment on Sunday morning and took a few pics of them hugging and kissing before she got into her car. I don't want to see them. That pretty much sealed the deal for me. I don't think I could ever trust her again. If she can turn it on and off so easily, to tell me she loves me while being with a different guy. Still, I decided that I am not going to jump to a knee-jerk reaction based on emotions. I need to remain calm and level. That's when Jen told me that Sharon was coming over for dinner. Sharon is the counselor that Jen set me up with an appointment for. To clarify, she has never met my wife, and this was my first time meeting her as well. Sharon was a very nice person, and we got along great. After dinner, Sharon and I went for a walk around Matt's neighborhood to walk the dogs and have a bit of a private conversation. Sharon was really helpful in the fact that she was a great listener and made me feel like I didn't need to be guarded. It was therapeutic to be that free with describing my feelings, as much as I am comfortable with. My brother, this was just different and very needed. It's the same reason why I like writing this on Reddit. It's a vent session that helps me untangle some of the mess in my head. Our walk lasted an hour, and the only real advice that Sharon gave me was to not delay the conversation with my wife. She said that the longer I wait, the harder it will become to talk to her about this. She said I need clarity more than anything at this point, and my wife is the only person that can give that to me. Later that night, Jen and Matt offered me to stay with them for as long as necessary. I know that Matt and I have an expiration period for being in close quarters with each other, so I spoke to my boss who was able to set me up in company housing. I've been staying there every second week for a while but have to leave on days off. He managed to make it work for me to stay full-time for a few months if I needed. I decided to rebook with Sharon for later this week. I figured our walk sufficed for the first session. She agreed. I spent the night on Sunday just laying in bed thinking about how to approach this. I struggled with this because even the imaginary scenario I had in my head was making me angry or sad. I decided I would just wing it. I'm usually good under pressure. Yesterday, I woke up and said my goodbyes to Matt and Jen. I drove towards home and was thinking, what if he was there when I arrived? Then I thought that it would likely just put me back in the angry spot I was a few days ago. I decided to do a drive-by first. Neither his truck or my wife's car were there. I went inside and grabbed a bunch of essentials and things I don't want to part with, mainly just some photos and old family heirlooms. I got them all packed up in my truck and then headed over to the guy's apartment. Her car wasn't there either, but his truck was. I decided to text her to see where she was. She said she was getting groceries. I trust her so little right now that I drove by the grocery store and actually confirmed she was there. I feel so dirty admitting that I did that, but my trust is broken, and it's the only way I can be certain of anything. I wrote her again and told her to just come home because we need to talk. She wrote back, "What's wrong?" I just responded and said she needs to be ready to be honest and then turned my phone off. She got home 15 minutes later. When she came in, she came over to give me a hug and kiss like she does every time. I turned away from her. She asked me again what was wrong, so I told her that she needs to start being honest with me. She played dumb and said she had no idea what I was talking about. I said, "Okay, if you can't be honest, then I am leaving." She started panicking at this point and said, "Are you talking about yoga?" I figured it was a start. I asked her what she was talking about, and she told me that she hadn't been going to yoga. Here's a bit of a breakdown of the rest of the conversation. Me, "If you weren't going to yoga, then where were you going?" Her, "I was taking walks to relax because I've been so stressed lately." Me, "Why were you so stressed? And why did you lie to me about what you were doing?" Her, "Preparing for the move has been stressing me out, and I just didn't know how to tell you." Me, "So lying was the decision you made. What was your concern with telling me that you were going for a walk?" Her, "I didn't mean to lie. I was worried that my stress would add to your stress." Me, "But I'm not stressed. It really seems like you are not telling me everything." Her, "What do you mean?" Me, "I think that you're lying about more than just skipping yoga. I am asking you again to be honest. You've already lied to me, so this can't work if you keep lying." Her, "I don't know what else to say." "Oh, are you talking about last weekend when I went for drinks with some friends and came home late? I had a feeling that bothered you." Me, "Is that what you actually did that night? Or was that a lie as well?" Her, "I went for drinks that night, but I didn't see her best friend who she supposedly was with that night." Me, "Who did you see?" Her, "No one. I just drank alone." Me, "You drink alone now?" Her, "Yeah. Maybe I have a problem." Me, "Maybe we'll talk about that later. Last chance. Be honest or I'm leaving." Her, I don't know what else to say." Me, "Okay, I'm leaving." At this point, I got up and left. Usually when we have an argument, I go for a drive to get away from her. She probably thought this was the same. Then she realized I took my clothes and toiletries as well as the Xbox. That's when she began blowing up my phone. I told her that I gave her a chance to be honest and she didn't, so there's nothing left to say. She begged and pleaded with me to come home to talk about this in person. She said she had no idea why I was so upset or what I think she did. She repeated that she loved me and would never hurt me. Just hearing her say that really tore a new hole in my chest. It was always comforting words that I believed without question. Now it's a dull, jagged knife sawing through my heart in the most devastating way. I couldn't handle it, so I hung up. She called back about 40 times before I was ready to answer again. This time she said, "Did you talk to Karen, her best friend?" I asked why and she said, "Come home. I don't want to say this over the phone." I agreed and drove around a little longer to get my heart rate back down. Then I went home. That conversation went like this. Her, "I assume you spoke to Karen." Me, her, "Well, a few weeks ago while you were at work, we went for drinks. A couple of guys started buying us drinks, so we just played along. When we were leaving, one of the guys tried to kiss me. I pulled away immediately and told him I was married. I felt so bad about it and wanted to tell you, but I'm an idiot and just decided to hide it from you. Karen hooked up with the other guy and gave his friend my number without asking me. He has texted me a few times since, but I have never written him back." Me, "Can I see your phone?" Her, "Yes." She showed me her phone, which was completely empty of texts except for myself and her mother. She never deletes her texts, so this was new. I looked at her photos, which was also clean, but then I checked the deleted photos and found one of a guy I didn't recognize. Me, "Who is this?" Her, "That's the guy who tried to kiss me." Me, "Why did you take a picture of him?" Her, "I was just being stupid." Me, "That's not a reason. Why did you take a picture of him?" Her, "I don't know." Me, "Is that everything you want to tell me? Or is there more?" Her, "That's all I can think of." Once again, I left. I didn't want to be trickle-truthed. I got in my truck and drove away. She ran outside trying to stop me, but I was already out of reach. I went to the park nearby and just sat on my tailgate and ate my lunch, trying to figure out what to do next. While there, I began remembering other things that I should have been more aware of. Things like, I was working a weekend shift and was in bed early. My wife went out to the club with a few of her girlfriends. I woke up at 4 a.m. And she still wasn't home. I called her a few times, but there was no answer. About 30 minutes later, she called me back and asked if I would come and get her. When I picked her up, she told me that they were trying to hail a taxi but had no luck. A couple of guys that her friend knew stopped and offered them a ride but wanted to stop at home first. When they got to the guy's house, her married friend went into a room with one of the guys. My wife said she spent some time looking for her, but then eventually gave up and just had a drink in the kitchen with her roommates while she waited. She claimed she didn't hear her phone when I tried calling. We fought about this and she was disgusted by her friend's actions, so she cut that friend out of her life. I thought that was over. Another time she traveled to visit a close friend in a different city. It was a planned girls' night. There were 4 girls all getting drunk and watching movies in their PJs. At least that's what I was told. Then she called me around 1 a.m. to say goodnight. We spoke for about 20 minutes, and she repeatedly told me that they were having a great girls' night. Then I heard a guy's voice in the background. I asked who it was, and she denied hearing anything at first. Then it happened again loudly. She couldn't deny it, so she was like, "Oh yeah, X took a couple of guys with her. Everyone here is super pissed about it. She was drunk and 3 hours away. She left me no choice but to trust her again." We fought about that and why she refused to tell me they were there. She promised never to put herself in that type of situation again. Clearly that didn't stick. After remembering all of those things and the conversations we had about them, I was ready to give this one last shot. I turned my phone back on, and almost immediately it rang. I answered, and she was screaming for me to come home. I drove back to the house. I walked inside and was immediately confronted by her, bawling her eyes out. She was sitting on the couch repeating, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I asked her, "Sorry for what?" She began rocking back and forth like a crazy person. It took her a good 5 minutes to catch her breath enough to speak. Her, "I lied about the guy who tried to kiss me." Me, "Okay. Tell me what happened." Her, "The 4 of us actually went back to his place that night. We fooled around." Me, "What did you do?" Her, "Do you want me to actually tell you?" Me, "Yes." Her, "He fingered me and I gave him a blow job." Me, "Was that it?" Her, "Yes." Me, "I'm not playing this game any longer. You either tell me everything right now, or this will be the last time we speak." She began bawling again and took another few minutes before she was able to speak. Her, "We met up again and had sex. I'm so sorry. I love you, and I'll do anything to make up for this." Me, "Just the one time?" Her, "If I tell you the truth, please give me a chance to do anything I can to make up for it. Please." Me, "I'll think about it." Her, "It was an affair. We had been hooking up while you're out of town for work. It's been going on for almost a month now. He is married, and they are about to get divorced." Me, "Does he know you're married?" Her, "Yes." Me, "If he's having an affair because his marriage is failing, does that mean you think ours is failing? Is that what you told him?" Her, "No, I don't think ours is failing. I'm so stupid. I hate myself. Please don't leave me. I can fix this." Me, "How?" Her, "Whatever you want." Me, "If you were in my shoes or even his wife's shoes, what would fix this for you?" Her, "Knowing the truth. Being able to trust you to mean what you are saying. You can trust me. I screwed up and won't do that again." Me, "If you were his wife, wouldn't you want to know the truth?" Her, "Yes." Me, "Then fix this." Her, "You want me to call her?" Me, "If you think that is what you would want." She tried calling but never got an answer. A few minutes later, her cell phone rang. It was listed as Karen Work. She looked shocked, so I knew that wasn't Karen. I asked if that was him. She said it was. I answered, and being the coward he is, he said, "Oops, I must have the wrong number." I said, "No, this is the husband of the girl you've been cheating with. I'm going to let you speak to her because she has something to say to you." I passed her the phone. Her, I told him everything. He knows the entire truth. We're done. It was just a fling, and now you need to never contact me again. I asked to see the phone before she hung up. Me, what divorce lawyer are you using? Him, I'm not getting divorced. Me, oh, but didn't you tell my wife that you were? Him, no. Me, okay. Then can I speak to your wife? I feel she has as much right to know about this as I do. Him, please man, I didn't know she was married. Don't ruin my marriage over a mistake. Me, you ruined mine over a mistake. It's only fair that I tell your wife. Him, please don't. She's at work right now. I will tell her everything when she gets home. I swear. Me, okay, you do that. That's where I hung up. I asked my wife if she knew where his wife worked and her name. She did. I had my wife call over and ask for her at work. She did get her on the phone and told her to take a seat. This woman said she was just getting ready to leave for the day and she would call my wife back from her car. She did. His wife. What's going on? My wife? I have something terrible to tell you, and I don't want to cause any accidents. Please don't. His wife. OMG. Did something happen to his name? My wife? No. He's at your apartment right now. I am just letting you know that we have been having an affair for a month now. I'm coming clean to my husband right now and thought you should be given the same respect. She went silent for about a minute, then said, if this is some sick joke, I will find out who you are. Then she hung up. Not even 10 minutes later, my wife got a text from Karen work saying, thanks. You just ruined my life. I grabbed the phone and wrote back, you just ruined 4 lives and 2 marriages. Don't forget that. This was your fault, you piece of... For the next hour, my wife begged and pleaded with me to stay with her. She offered counseling. She offered to never leave my side. She even offered me sexual favors. This was everything that I expected, thanks to the comments in here. She then said we should go on that vacation, her treat. We need time away, was her reason. We need to spend some quality time together because my work schedule has been pushing us apart lately. Also exactly what I expected her to say. She wasn't expecting me to tell her that I went anyway. She also wasn't expecting me to tell her that I already have counseling booked for myself. She definitely wasn't expecting me to tell her that I busted her on my very own bed. I could only imagine she didn't expect me to have a place already lined up to stay. When I told her all of that, she fell to the floor, bawling. She started saying how she doesn't deserve to live. She told me I should just kill her right now because she's too terrible to be with anyone. It went on like that for a while. I stayed for a total of 4 hours listening to her make excuses, then try to hug me or cuddle me or even blow me if I would just stay and work through this with her. In the end, I called Karen and told her that her cheating friend is suicidal and that she should come keep an eye on her. Then I left. It's been almost a full day since that went down, and I haven't spoken to her since. She has been calling and texting me all day. Her friends and family have been calling and texting me all day. Everyone has a different excuse or a different plea for empathy. Her father is the only one who wrote me and told me that I need to do what is best for me and that he will always love me like a son, no matter what happens. Reading that was what made me have a good cry for the first time since all of this began. I meet with Sharon, my counselor, tomorrow and my lawyer on Thursday. I think I know where this is going, but until it happens, I'm just not sure about anything. I'm sorry for the overly long-winded story. It just helps to vent in this way. Again, I really appreciate all of the comments and messages. The people sharing their own stories like this are really helping me feel less broken and giving me more hope. I sincerely appreciate everything you've all said and done for me. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.